With just a single piece of bread, she conquered the empire's most handsome man. She even made that noble man willingly bear the flower of enticement on his body. He never expected things to turn out this way. Not long ago, the world's most notorious villainess completely disappeared one day. Endless speculation filled the empire, yet the truth remained hidden. And now, the girl looks at the clues she finally found, her fingers trembling slightly. This is the murderer who destroyed her life. Rumor has it that Count Villainess conducted cruel experiments on elves. Though they already had 3 sons, they surprisingly wanted to adopt another child from the orphanage. For the sake of revenge, the girl swallowed a potion. The legendary Villainess transformed into a diaper-clad warrior, preparing to infiltrate the enemy family. Looking at the youthful face in the mirror and the noisy shouts of the brats around her, a month had already passed. When exactly are they coming? Just when the girl could no longer hold on, news of the noble's visit finally arrived. The girl stumbled to the door. A luxurious carriage had already pulled up, and the man who stepped down was none other than Count Villainess. Stars appeared in the girl's eyes. For the first time, her enemy felt so dear. Among the many children, the girl was naturally the most eye-catching, but the man only gave her a brief glance, with no intention of adopting her. Feeling insulted, the girl became unhappy on the spot. Pulling out a rock-hard French baguette, she prepared to teach him a lesson. However, the girl's strong-willed appearance instantly piqued the man's interest. Upon learning the girl's name was Sisha, and under her suspicious gaze, she was suddenly hoisted into the air by him. From today onwards, I am your father. The girl was speechless. This man is so casual. But is this plot development really right? Inside the jolting carriage, the girl began to doubt her life, while the man kept a constant smile on his face. He then prepared to give the girl a gift as a welcoming gesture. What kind of gift? This 5-year-old toddler almost wet herself. Could it be some kind of poison or something? The girl met the man's eyes. A qualified hunter should maintain their disguise at all times. After indicating that the bracelet was a bit loose, the man's gentle voice followed. From now on, whatever you want, Daddy will satisfy it. At that moment, the air suddenly chilled. But you must also grant Daddy one wish. An overwhelming aura instantly filled the entire carriage. Is this the true face of the Villainess family? Suddenly, the carriage was intercepted. It turned out to be the Holy Night Order on a routine inspection. During the month the witch had been missing, things seemed a bit too quiet. A terrifying thought abruptly appeared in the girl's mind. Does the man know her whereabouts? While she was thinking, the man revealed a strange, tiny smile. The adoption of a daughter must be kept secret. Black magic, strictly forbidden by the Empire, was instantly released from the man's hand. The girl's mouth fell open in surprise, thinking his daughter was frightened. The Count quickly snapped his fingers, and black magic immediately enveloped the carriage completely. Looking at the building before her, this was Count Villainess' serpent-like castle. The girl stared blankly at the ceiling. She hadn't expected the man would go to such lengths just to coax her to sleep. She had been at the Count's house for a week now. It seemed the man treated her like a charm, never leaving her side. He would even patiently read her fairy tales. She looked at this man suspiciously. In this empire with such strong faith, using black magic without permission would lead to immediate execution if discovered. The girl instinctively tried to guess his motives. To her surprise, the man started singing a lullaby. What's the point of singing if you're completely out of tune? If only this were my mother's lullaby. Though her memories of her mother were blurred, a gentle feeling vaguely surfaced in her mind. The man's raspy voice unconsciously lulled the girl into a dreamland. When she opened her eyes again, the man had been waiting for quite some time. He picked the girl up. Come and see your older brothers. Little information was known about the 3 brothers, only that the eldest was 13 years old, while the twins below were 11. Without waiting for the girl to react, the man carried the little bundle to the study. Hearing the news that the man was about to go out, the girl's long stagnant face finally broke into a bright smile. Finally, I can be alone for a while. At that moment, the Count's eldest son also arrived at the study. The moment he saw the girl, his brow furrowed visibly. It turned out they were about to set off for the Black Forest. Ignoring the boy's strange look, the girl slowly offered a greeting, trying to recall what they were going there for. But the boy paused. Even if you're crazy, don't involve innocent people. What a strange father-son relationship. But the man remained cheerful. He smiled and patted the girl's head, then turned to leave. After a moment's hesitation, the girl still asked the doubt in her heart, do I look like someone? The vague mentions between them, and even the great effort to find her, this whole situation made the girl feel that her adoption was no accident. But the man gave no response, merely stroking the girl's hair. I'll tell you when I get back. But the girl certainly wouldn't just sit and wait. Since it's like this, then I'll investigate your secrets thoroughly. A magic circle had just appeared, when suddenly, a strong hand covered her mouth. Outside the castle, a man held the little girl with one hand, throwing her onto a carriage full of flowers. The girl looked dazed. Who is using me for what now? She intended to take them both out with a casual strike, but a figure suddenly appeared at that moment. It was Basil, the Count's 3rd son. The girl watched curiously, only to see him walk straight past the 2 men toward her. This was also his first time looking at this child adopted by his family from up close. He then reached out his wicked hand and pinched the girl's cheek. The assassins behind him, seeing themselves ignored, raised their sharp swords to finish off this arrogant fellow in front of him. As flowers bloomed in the air, the 2 men instantly turned into scattered debris. Basil thoughtfully covered the girl's mouth. After his line of sight was clear, a faint smile appeared on Basil's lips. You don't seem scared at all. Meanwhile, inside the study, the eldest brother, Ishur, stared across. Basil placed this cute thing on the table. Neither of them mentioned the attempted kidnapping. Their expressions were full of approval for Siesh's appearance. The eldest brother then expressed unusual concern regarding the motive behind the adoption. He even wanted to secretly send the girl away. But the girl was no fool. She made up a lame excuse to placate him. Both felt the child might have been traumatized. However, Basil brought up that matter about the Count's rebellious act to resurrect the dead. Life and death are the domain of God, yet the Count actually had such a dark plan. The two of them showed deep suspicion toward the Count's choice to use the child as a sacrifice. What are you talking about? My children? Sisha suddenly remembered that hidden past from 15 years ago. The Count and the woman who walked out of the forest. After bearing 3 sons, the Countess strangely died one day. And the Count himself went completely mad. Sisha now understood the reason for the adoption. Was it to make her a sacrifice? At that moment, the Count walked into the room. Under the girl's questioning gaze, Sisha is my daughter. How could such a daughter be a sacrifice? Daddy has only one request. Give me the crown of the Elf Queen. This is a sacred relic of the Holy Empire, which only children under the age of 5 can touch. And the Empire was about to hold a ceremony to give the crown to the most sacred child. The girl lay in bed, thinking about the near future, how she, a villainess, would have to pray. Was she losing her grip? Moreover, if she encountered that man again, there was a high chance she would die. She had originally infiltrated to investigate the elf experiments. How did the plot turn out like this? Thinking of this, the girl decided that before something strange happened, she should slip away first. Fortunately, she had prepared an invisibility painting in advance. The girl's little feet moved quickly on the ground, but a petal fell to the floor. A figure stood behind her and picked up the petal, looking puzzled. The girl ran even faster. A moment later, the girl stood in the courtyard. She had accidentally tripped, causing the petal to fly out. This led to her being caught on the spot by the boy. Sisha had no choice but to act dumb, but the boy slowly leaned in, trying to find clues of the petal on the girl. He slowly bent down, gently sniffing the girl's hair. Just as the girl was about to be exposed, the bell for an enemy invasion suddenly rang. The girl suddenly felt her body lighten. She was already clinging to her brother. Meanwhile, the Count's calm expression seemed arrogant to the man reading the imperial decree. A fierce argument followed. Hearing that she also had to go into the palace, Sisha was also somewhat confused. They were about to head to the palace overnight, but the Count only smiled faintly. He then turned back to look at his little daughter. Sensing the familiar aura, it turned out he had long discovered Sisha wasn't in her bedroom. He was just about to send troops to search. Karl laughed disdainfully. What a disgrace. The man's tenderness toward his daughter was exactly the same as it was for the Countess. Is it because we are so alike? But an elf's appearance is composed of illusions. The man didn't reminisce, simply turned around quickly holding his daughter to the palace tonight. The next day, the girl sat in the palace, feeling that escape was even more hopeless. As time passed, the door was suddenly pushed open. This familiar figure instantly made the girl's hair stand on end. Aaron, the Inquisitor of Heresy, a person with the power of life and death in the Empire. Because he had contained many holy relics, he himself was called the proof of divinity. The moment the man walked through the door, he noticed Sisha. Looking at her distinctive pink pupils, the man's eyes gradually narrowed. Then he strode forward. Just as his palm was about to touch her, the Count grabbed it. What are you going to do to my daughter? Aaron pulled his hand back, relieved, claiming the girl just looked very familiar. Hostility filled the room in an instant. Fortunately, thanks to the adjutant's persuasion, the two did not break into a violent conflict. But the secret struggle did not stop. Aaron used the uncertainty of the girl's identity to keep the Count at bay. As the door slammed shut, only the two of them remained in the room. The man's gaze was like a sharp sword, making the girl's stray hair stand up. Looking at the girl's similar face, are you Lethea's daughter? The shocking words nearly made the girl's mind short-circuit. What on earth is this guy talking about? It turns out, his entanglement with the man went back a long time. She had once begged the man to end her exhausted life. She was refused. After their brief encounter, the two returned to their separate lives. She didn't expect that meeting again would be under these circumstances. Seeing the girl didn't answer, the man slowly sat down. She thought the matter was over, but Aaron began to unbutton his collar on his own. Where had 5-year-old Sisha ever seen such a scene? She quickly buried her head in the sofa, acting like an ostrich. As the clothes were pulled open, the girl noticed through the gaps in her fingers a vivid rose pattern below the man's collarbone. Suddenly, the Count's voice appeared. Do you want to die, Lord Aaron? The Count slowly walked in, as a knight of the stars, to actually leave an enchantress mark on oneself. But Aaron only dressed himself unhurriedly. Do you know Lethea? This brief question allowed the Count to guess immediately. A bamboo spear with a sharp tip instantly pressed against Aaron's throat. Sisha has nothing to do with her. Don't test my patience any further. Aaron slowly stood up. This time I will act as a guard. Then we shall meet again once she is in hand. The Count looked at the child before him, and the seriousness on his face instantly turned into doting. The moment of absence earlier was only to vent his anger at the Emperor, who had handed his daughter over to an Inquisitor. To make his daughter happy, the Count took Sisha for a walk in the palace. Tell Daddy whatever you like. Even if it's a castle, Daddy will give it to you. But the worry on the man's face was still seen through by the girl. She raised her small hand and gently stroked the man's hair. Sisha will always be on Daddy's side. But what the girl didn't know was, her behavior was exactly like the Countess. A few days later, the girl was walking in the villa located in the capital. The Count's reaction made Sisha even more curious. Wanting to find out the truth, she gave up on escaping. But the way her brothers treated children gave Sisha a headache. What she didn't know was, from a window on the 3rd floor, a pair of eyes was quietly watching all this. The Vasilian family's originally peaceful life had been completely shattered after their mother's passing. Even the child who was supposed to be born died in the womb. During the Count's period of madness, Belle had taken on the family's responsibilities early on, carefully hiding his fragile self. because he still had younger siblings to look after, and the Count's own condition was even worse. He abandoned everything, guarding his late wife's remains without rest, ignoring Belle's desperate cries. He cast aside his responsibilities as a count until that idea emerged. Yes, I am Count Vasilian. So I should be able to bring you back to life. That was the beginning of his fall. In Belle's eyes, the current count was just a shell, his mind full of forbidden desires. In his plan, using the elf crown as a sacrifice to resurrect his wife, the family's destruction was only a matter of time, and as a participant, Sisha would also be unable to escape. But looking at the equally obsessive twins, fortunately, this sister was adapting better than expected, and she couldn't help but think of that child who died in the womb. If that sister had been born, she probably would have looked like this now. But the Count's voice interrupted Belle's thoughts. The conversation between father and son was always sharp, thinking of the dark plan about to be executed and the hopeless future in the Count's eyes. Belle felt guilty for failing his mother's request. Then, the 13-year-old boy bravely looked up. He had to stop this unscrupulous Count, finally showing his matchless resolve. The weapon held high was no longer for himself, but to take revenge for his brother. Not long ago, to compete for their sister's love, the two brothers started showering her with gifts. The family's rare warm atmosphere was also observed by the maid nearby, and Count Rudin came to visit at this time. The three of them appearing together even slightly stunned Countess Rudin. Looking at Count Rudin, who had delivered the decree last time, he was still visiting under imperial orders. To see Sisha, the newly adopted child, his arrogant attitude made Belle very unhappy. All of this was seen by the very observant Sisha. As the cup was placed back on the table, Count Rudin began his performance, insinuating that Sisha was just a lowly orphan. Fortunately, Sisha wasn't really a young child. Facing this childish mockery, she didn't even bother to respond. But these words made the second son, Karl, instantly lose his temper. A cold sword was instantly unsheathed, pressed against the woman's throat. Basil also wanted the chance to show off, but considering Sisha in his arms, he could only sigh inwardly. At this moment, Belle spoke up to stop the farce. Although his eyes were filled with anger, the reason of being responsible for the family still urged him to maintain etiquette. But the teenager's restraint was met with even more unscrupulous mockery. Is this the Vasilian tradition? Or are all children without mothers like this? These words deeply struck Belle's tense heartstrings. Hearing the other party arrogantly storm out, the boy's slightly thin figure couldn't help but tremble slightly at this moment. After stopping his impulsive brother, he also turned and left alone. Sisha felt the oppressive atmosphere and trembled. She then thought it was because of her that everyone was enduring these insults. Having had similar experiences with being insulted, she truly felt that Belle's mood must be very terrible. She nimbly got down from Basil, and then quickly ran out the door. Following the magic guidance, she came to a storage room. Sisha poked her head in. She finally found that lonely figure. Even though he was the eldest brother, he was still essentially a 13-year-old child. Sisha softly came to the boy's side and then sat down. She was thinking about how to comfort him, but before the clumsy girl could speak, Belle forced a calm explanation, saying it was only because she bore the family name that he stood up for her. Sisha understood the boy's hesitation. He wasn't lying. She just handed a flower to the boy. This gesture made Belle's heart skip a beat. The mood improves a bit when you smell flowers. This was the scene of his mother's first comfort to Belle. The teenager's long-suppressed heart finally gave way. Tears kept falling down his cheeks. After a long silence, the boy finally composed his emotions. He just wanted to follow his mother's instructions. The Count and his brother's recklessness made him fear the family would collapse at any moment, and also fear that the family's dark side would bring unimaginable disaster to Sisha. The boy's words were still hanging in the air when he saw that Sisha had already walked far away. She didn't say much, just gently closed the door, and that woman's rudeness made Sisha's originally cold heart become restless again. It was truly irritating. In the blink of an eye, it was night. Count Rudin was enjoying his leisurely time, thinking about how he had unbridledly vented his anger at Count Vasilian's house during the day. His ego inflated even more. In a tipsy state, he soon fell asleep. But a figure quietly appeared at that moment. Sisha's body was now surging with magic, descending with an unmatched posture. She entered Rudin's dream. The Count Rudin who was so arrogant just now was now being toyed with like a rat. Lithia, in her original form, was releasing her misplaced anger. She wanted to give him a fatal blow, but thinking of the humiliation Belle and her other brothers felt during the day, she decided to prolong this hunting game. Her methods made Rudin cry and beg for mercy countless times, and the game also reached its finale. The weapon was held high in Lithia's hand. Just as she was about to strike, a burst of powerful magic shattered the nightmare she had prepared for Rudin. To be safe, Sisha decided to hide herself first, but the person who arrived gave him a huge shock. It was actually his cheap old man. Sisha watched from the shadows with a snap of Count Vasilian's fingers. Poor Rudin was about to experience the most loving moment of his life. Behind Sisha's fate, there seemed to be deep-seated secrets. Yet, a vast amount of information could not be gathered at all. The girl, who originally wanted revenge, was now focused solely on finding the truth. After, Sisha gave Count Rudin a harsh lesson. Keen arrived shortly after. Just like his snake-like nickname, Rudin, under painful torture, kept begging for mercy. He enjoyed Rudin's pleas, but thinking of his little daughter waiting at home, he finished his business quickly. Rudin finally paid the price of his life for his meanness today. Sisha, observing in secret, also witnessed this scene. She instinctively worried whether the man would be held accountable by the emperor. But the man's expression remained calm and indifferent. He fiddled with his watch. Thinking of the little daughter at home, he decided he should return quickly. Sisha almost couldn't maintain her composure. She also had to get back as soon as possible. A moment later, Sisha trotted back home, nearly running straight into Keen. With a dark face, the man picked up the girl. She thought she was about to be caught, but surprisingly, the man just wanted an affectionate hug from his daughter. Sensing the smell of alcohol on her father, she keenly realized the man was drunk. But even so, he still hadn't forgotten about his daughter. Looking at the small cookies in her hand, the girl felt the long-lost sensation of being cared for. Differing from Count Ruden's perspective, he was no longer the violent count, but more like a doting father. With a snap of the man's fingers, black magic enveloped the two of them again. It's time to sleep. When she opened her eyes again, Keen had already assumed a posture to coax her to sleep. He stroked the girl's head, looking at his face which had lost its smile. Little Sisha just felt that daddy was acting weird today. Thinking of the emotional breakdown of Belle, and then looking at the man in front of her, he seemed to share a similar sadness. Is it because of the countess? But the man didn't give an answer. He fell asleep. It seemed he slept exceptionally peacefully beside his daughter. During these days, little Sisha also sensed the guidance of fate. It seemed the mystery of the countess was related to her. By now, she had already quietly slipped downstairs, planning to find some useful information. Meanwhile, in Lethea's original hideout, the arrival of an uninvited guest completely shattered the dark silence. During that period of time when no one cared, the man had traversed more than half of the Empire's territory just to find that woman's figure, the woman who had left a brand on him. And today, he stood here as a heresy inquisitor. When will your master come to save you? On the other side, Sisha was completely unaware of everything happening outside, trying to find useful information in the records room. The fallen leaves in the loose mezzanine piqued her interest, but the content inside made her pupils shrink. This was actually an investigation report about Lethea. Early the next morning, the Vasilian family gathered for a rare meal together. Facing her father's attempt to feed her, Sisha had not even a hint of interest. The information she discovered yesterday detailed her entire life. Some details were things even she herself didn't know. In these 20 long years, what kind of role had he played? Persecution or protection? Fortunately, the others didn't notice Siesh's mood. Looking at the obituary of Count Ruden in the newspaper, Belle instantly guessed it was his father's handiwork. He stared fixedly at the man, confused by his sudden care for the family's honor, but the man just smiled. Ruden's words of humiliation towards them made him want to kill the man 10 million times over. It was truly a pity for him to die so simply. Glancing at his little daughter, Keen announced his decision. He would let the family resurface. Belle couldn't help but be a bit dazed. In all these years, this was the first time his father took charge of family matters. But quickly calming down, he began to remind the man not to be so impulsive in the future. The man didn't express his stance, only saying that a tutor would be coming home, telling them to look after Sisha before turning to leave. Seeing Keen go out, Sisha instantly jumped down from the dining table. After returning to her room, Sisha tried to piece all the clues together. Keen's investigation of her information must have connections with the underworld. The man knew about her exclusive tattoo and knew her whereabouts perfectly. And the countess passed away 7 years ago. Now the only thing missing was the spirit crown. But why would he target an orphan like her? This tangled web of thoughts made Sisha irritable. She then released a magic butterfly, trying to get information from her subordinates. But the butterfly used for tracking seemed to have lost its target. Instantly, an ominous feeling clouded her mind. Who dared to touch my people? The well-behaved and cute girl was secretly a world-renowned, peerless wicked woman. After becoming the young daughter of the Count's house in the name of investigation, she had actually gained everyone's affection. But just as she was feeling the long-lost warmth, an accident quietly occurred. On a stormy night, Lethea had saved an abandoned puppy boy. Because of a magical experiment, he was unable to hide his puppy-like traits. Looking at this curled-up man, Lethea used magic to hide the appearance he was so ashamed of. The girl's deliberately hidden gentleness was also fully seen by the man. He swore his loyalty to Lethea, but the girl didn't want to take in this puppy, fearing that her notoriety would bring disaster upon him. Her cold attitude made the disappointment in the man's eyes impossible to hide, yet he still lingered by Lethea's side every day, making special potions for spirits, running through every street to gather information, and crafting exquisite jewelry for her. Lethea ultimately couldn't resist and took in this capable man named Shada. In this world where everyone despised her, someone actually came for her, and this special man had actually gotten into trouble today. Sisha prepared to sneak out. Upon opening the door, she actually found all her brothers outside. Basil patted the girl's head, saying they had urgent business and had to go out. Then, under Carl's urging, they walked out the door. Sisha watched blankly. Did happiness come too suddenly? Looking at her ransacked hideout, the girl's mood was also very bad. Scenes from the past flashed in her mind. She didn't dare imagine the consequences if the man was harmed. After pressing a switch, the girl walked into the secret space of the space. In a conspicuous place, she found the potion the man had prepared in advance. But what on earth was this heart-shaped bottle? At that moment, a sound came from outside. The brother who just said they were going out actually appeared here. There was no time to think. The girl immediately downed the potion and restored her original appearance. Just as she used magic to teleport, Carl found the secret room almost at the same time. Smelling the fragrance lingering in the air, it seemed very similar to his sister's. Carl slowly walked closer, but only found a residual empty bottle on the floor. A moment later, Lethea appeared in the city, and her appearance caused a stir in the crowd. After a brief investigation, she quickly understood what had happened. Someone had broken into her hideout and forcibly taken Shada as a hostage. In the end, it was all to get to her. Knowing the other party's goal, Lithia still decided to walk into the trap, announcing her return to the world as the prey. She soon attracted the hunter's attention. The man politely bowed, claiming to be a loyal follower of the master, sent to welcome her by the master's order. The girl's pupils shifted slightly. She hadn't expected the leader of the underworld to intervene in this matter. They were an organization with no detailed information, and the true masters of the underworld. This land once belonged to the Valen Empire, but one day it was suddenly cursed, becoming a wasteland where life could not bloom. On this abandoned land, people who could not survive in other empires gathered. After years of evolution, it became a neutral zone where various forces converged. Only the master could maintain even a minimum level of order. Thinking of this, Lithia did not resist much. She only wanted to find her puppy. Under the man's lead, she came to this palace built beneath the barren land. This was also her first time coming into close contact with this massive organization. Arriving at the inner chamber, the man behind the scenes slowly spoke. "This is our first time meeting. Just being in the same space made Lithia feel an immense pressure. But she remained neither humble nor pushy, telling the man to just get straight to the point. Even a heresy inquisitor of the Holy Empire could not interfere with the affairs of the underworld, and this reckless inquisitor was actually a man with close ties to Lithia. The girl instantly understood the only person related to her was the man named Hyelen. She wanted to deny it, but the person behind the scenes actually knew about the mark she left on the man. Before Lithia could speak, the man stated his intention. He approved of the girl's actions. As long as she handled that heresy inquisitor, he would not interfere in anything else. The girl elegantly turned to leave, politely declining the blindfolded man's guidance. The mark she left on Hyelen allowed the girl to clearly sense his location. As the teleportation magic activated, she instantly arrived at Hyelen's location, but the sight that met her eyes was the boy bound by iron chains. He actually risked himself for a prisoner. The man slowly spoke. Despite being prepared mentally, Lithia still didn't understand why the man did this. The moonlight filtered through the window onto the two of them. Hyelen went through all this trouble just to know the reason why the woman left him years ago, begging for a chance to die at the man's hands. And that was her first meeting with Hyelen. 5 years ago, when Lithia first awakened, her spirit power attracted endless hunting from hunters. The young girl was powerless to resist, only able to silently endure the tricks of fate, and the appearance of the boy before her gave her a glimmer of hope, a hope to die with dignity. She begged the boy to end her painful life. Opening her eyes again, Lithia found herself lying on a strange bed, thinking she still hadn't escaped capture. The girl could no longer restrain herself and broke down crying. Why was even a wish as simple as dying impossible? The world's malice was like a suffocating net, wrapping her tightly within it. Maybe dying by his hand would have been much easier. Just then, the face that appeared in her mind actually appeared outside the door. Lithia grabbed a candlestick to resist, but the boy in front of her just calmly put down some food. Looking at the defensive Lithia, he picked up a piece of bread and chewed it slowly in his mouth, telling her in this way that the food was safe. The girl froze. Despite experiencing countless betrayals, this time she inexplicably chose to trust him. She held the food and began to eat voraciously. Maybe it was because she hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. In a short while, she had eaten all the food. The boy silently tidied up the tableware. He looked at the young girl's cheeks. Despite having weathered some storms, the girl's beauty had not been diminished. He wanted to speak, but the moonlight above began to interfere. The delicate moonlight shimmered on the girl's face. The girl looked up, dazed. It seemed it had been a long time since she had stopped to look at the beauty in this world. She turned her head to look at the boy. "Thank you for helping me." This sudden change made the boy's cheeks turn completely red. The boy stammered, saying he was a knight of the Holy Empire, and this was all what he should do. These words made the girl fall into a panic again. The Holy Empire had zero tolerance for heretics if they discovered she was a spirit. The girl didn't dare imagine the fate that awaited her. Just as the girl was planning her escape, the boy just gently covered her with a blanket. "Sleep peacefully, I won't hurt you." And the girl's plan to escape fell through completely during a fever. During the few days of being carefully looked after, she also developed different feelings for the man. The escape failed, and she owed him a favor. She was curious why the boy wanted to help her, but the boy didn't explain. "My name is Hyelen. I hope you can remember me." Lithia was stunned. Suddenly, a shout came, breaking this delicate atmosphere. The two of them looked out the window. The hunters chasing Lithia had arrived. This made the girl panic instantly. She didn't want to drag down this kind boy. The number of hunters was simply too many. She wanted to tell him to leave her behind and go first, but the boy didn't accept it. It turned out that while looking after the girl these days, he would take time to go out to clear away the gloom that surrounded her. Now, very few hunters remained. Without acknowledging the girl's self-sacrifice, he took his weapon and turned to leave. "I only hope you can live well." Little did he know that his kindness would actually pull the distance between him and the girl further apart. "He is very good, but he'll be better off without me." Lithia was well aware of the boy's situation. The young knight had infinite potential in the future. While she was a spirit, a heretic in the eyes of the Holy Empire, she didn't want to become a stumbling block on the boy's growth path. She took one last look at this small house and left without a word. In the following 5 years of life on the run, Lithia finally grew into a rose with thorns. She slaughtered countless hunters who pursued her. Sometimes she would also think of that boy from that night. How was he doing now? Would he forgive her betrayal? Or had he also joined the ranks of those chasing her? Amidst her doubts, fate once again gave a definitive answer. They were on diametrically opposite paths, becoming each other's true mortal enemies. The girl, who had fallen into long memories, was interrupted by the man's voice. "Are you still not going to give me an answer this time?" But the girl didn't know how to speak. As if seeing Lithia's hesitation, The man changed the subject. Why did you suddenly disappear for a while? The gentle tone made the girl a bit uncomfortable. She thought this meeting was meant to be a final showdown. Suddenly, a strong discomfort came from her body. The potion was actually about to wear off. Are you about to be exposed right to his face? They were on diametrically opposite paths, becoming each other's true mortal enemies. But it seemed the man in front of her didn't think so. He cautiously inquired about the girl's whereabouts. Not waiting for a chance to answer, Lithia's body felt a strange sensation. She was actually going to turn back into little Sisha at this time. She had only one thought right now. She absolutely could not let her identity be revealed like this. Lithia's magic surged. At the moment the magic flashed, she grabbed a bag of flour and threw it in Hyelan's face. At the critical moment, she narrowly escaped with teleportation. Little Sisha sighed. Taking advantage of the gap, she quickly used magic again to turn back into her adult form. And just then, Hyelan also chased after her. Lithia's series of actions made his head spin. He instinctively thought the girl wanted to run away again. Shada wanted to rush forward but collapsed and was held down by Lithia's hand. After many years, the two's gazes met again. She clearly knew the insurmountable gap between them. Looking at the man and woman who had become heresy inquisitors, the last shred of possibility between them was also declared dead. Lithia brightened her magic and took out the relic the Empire dreamed of. The wool of Gerbs. She wanted to use this as an exchange for them to leave, but before she could finish, the man came in front of her. Thinking the other party disagreed, Lithia muttered to herself about destroying the relic. Hyelan just looked at her calmly. His lips parted slightly, but he said nothing. The sudden silence left Lithia bewildered. What is this guy doing? Why isn't he speaking? After a moment, Hyelan finally spoke. He didn't understand why Lithia was so anxious to clear their relationship. He walked up and pinched Lithia's face. The one who can stand by your side can only be me. Is someone chasing you? Or is it because of your woman? These words made Lithia couldn't help but sigh. How long was this guy going to misunderstand? She had no way to explain it herself. Forget it. Lithia threw out the relic. Just take it as you agreeing to this deal. After saying that, she teleported away from this trouble. The next day in the Vasilian family mansion, little Sisha was drinking milk tea with the sumptuous high tea her brothers prepared. Yesterday was the first time. The potion had failed. Fortunately, she wasn't discovered. But how could a perfect potion suddenly fail? She must ask Shada clearly next time. The girl quietly watched the two people arguing in front of her. Her brother's sudden visit made her realize things were not so simple. The underworld was not a place one could enter so easily. The Vasilian family must be hiding very deep secrets. While thinking, Sisha suddenly smelled a familiar scent. The bushes suddenly rustled, and a little puppy appeared, spinning around in front of everyone. Sisha was stunned on the spot. Yesterday Shada said he would come find her, but she didn't expect him to actually come. Sisha pounced on him, trying to get him to leave quickly, but obviously it was too late. The two brothers had already noticed this scene. Thinking Sisha liked it, they immediately decided to adopt it. Seeing this scene, only two words were in Sisha's mind: I'm doomed. But clearly, human joys and sorrows are not always shared. Sisha had to turn her pleading gaze to her father, hoping he would refuse the suggestion. Unexpectedly, he just took one look and agreed. At the dinner table, Sisha watched her brothers lose their tempers. It turned out the royal family's banquet was coming up soon, but the ordered clothes were very unsatisfying. The two were in a bad mood. While little Sisha ate her meal indifferently, Basil shook his head helplessly. This would be Sisha's first appearance as their sister. It had to be perfect. Basil then ran through 8 streets to custom make the most expensive dress for his sister. Watching Basil carefully coordinate it, and in her past memories, every time Basil appeared, he always seemed to love dressing up. Sisha asked out of confusion. Basil thought for a moment and said he was just used to this pretentiousness now. He didn't like looking as if he had no mother. It turned out that when the Countess passed away, their father and Belle often left home. As children, he and Carl didn't yet understand death. They thought their mother had just gone on a long journey. So, whenever he was free, he would try to find her and bring her back, until one day, he heard the wanton ridicule of others, claiming that though Basil came from a prestigious family, he dressed like a beggar with no one to teach him. In that moment, he finally understood the true meaning of death and knew his mother would never return. His sincere emotions completely shattered the darkness within the executioner's heart, and the truth about the Vasilian family finally surfaced. Little Sisha lay in bed, unable to fall asleep, thinking of the seemingly cheerful Basil and the weakness hidden deep in his heart, as well as the deliberate bullying by the royal tailors. The idea of opening a fashion shop spontaneously arose. The next day, to buy accessories for their sister, the two brothers prepared to go to the underworld. Sisha volunteered, wanting to join their team. The two looked at the little thing, thinking it was just an ignorant joke from their sister, but the girl used her first outing since arriving as an excuse, putting on a look of grievance. Seeing his sister's cute appearance, Basil even wanted to take all the pocket money he had hidden in a bird's nest and give it to his sister. Sisha also showed a triumphant expression. Following her brothers to the underworld, she would uncover the family's hidden truths bit by bit. The carriage drifted further away. The two patiently warned Sisha never to tell their eldest brother. The underworld was not as prosperous as the Empire. After reaching their destination, the three walked towards an alley. After many twists and turns, they pushed open a door and arrived at a hat shop. This place turned out to be Lithia's secret base. Listening to the praise from their mouths, they had no idea the owner was the little kid they were holding. Shada also appeared in time, having changed his clothes. Just as Shada was about to introduce the products, the keen-scented Carl smelled a familiar scent on Shada. It smells a lot like our family dog. These words terrified the three of them. Sisha and Shada worried about being exposed, while Basil was worried these words would leave their sister with a rude impression. Carl didn't probe further, turning around to pick out gifts for his sister. Looking at the room full of exquisite hats, Basil couldn't wait to have his sister try them on. The little girl turned into a soft and cute critter, striking hard at Basil's heart. There was no need to choose between the hats. Basil pulled out his wallet. Buy them all. Just then, Carl spoke up again. Do you also make potions here? Last time I came, I saw some elf thing or something. Shada's fur almost stood on end from fright. Fortunately, Basil stepped in again to resolve the situation, saying Carl wasn't quite right today. You want to find an elf, right? The one in my hand is one. Sisha, having escaped disaster once again, had beads of sweat on her head. Under Siesha's eye signal, Shada prepared to take them to the clothing shop. And so, an eccentric cat monster manager appeared before their eyes. The strange look gave all three of them quite a shock. Fortunately, the manager's skill and taste were very good. With just one look at the three of them, the theme for this formal wear was decided. While communicating details with Basil, Carl's eyes looked to the side. Today, he seemed unexpectedly sensitive. But outside, the dust was flying, and no one paid attention. After the three walked out of the clothing shop, Carl seemed to sense something. With an instinctive swing of his blade, he sliced a large net in half. Basil held his sister tightly, while Carl drew his twin blades. A gang of robbers actually appeared ahead. This was the trash that gathered in the underworld. Seeing the wealthy-looking trio, they immediately began their move. A light frown appeared on Basil's face. His good mood from being out with his sister was ruined by a group of trash making trouble. Carl held his twin blades before his chest and charged fiercely at the robbers. Just at the moment the blades were about to fall, their movements suddenly froze. The familiar blindfolded man walked out from the side. The master does not wish for any more disturbance. This was a world of chaos, where even crimes required no price. The blindfolded man even expressed dissatisfaction with Carl for causing a disturbance. This eerie atmosphere made Sisha freeze in shock. Zihan was the master's highest direct subordinate, also known as the symbol of misfortune. In this chaotic underworld, his appearance symbolized death. Sisha grew even more confused in her heart. Just who was this master? Even a disturbance of this level would be targeted by the other party. This also made her even more curious about the Vasilian secrets. At that moment, Zihan set his eyes on Sisha in Basil's arms. Siesha's head was still full of question marks, but Zihan performed a polite salute. He didn't say the common goodbye, but rather let's not meet again next time. She thought he was just cold by nature, but Zihan shook his head. If one associates with such a person, they will become unfortunate. His words seemed to reveal a self-loathing. And this loathing also brought back unbearable memories for the girl. Once regarded as a shrewd woman, Siesha's childhood had been as dark as his. The girl raised her head, responding to the man with a bright smile. Next time we meet, let's sit by the fire. Zihan's face still showed no expression. After letting the three leave, he turned and walked away. No one saw the violence in the alley that night. This man brandished a leather whip, and one of them was the robber from during the day. Thinking of that cute face from the daytime, the man's hand holding the whip trembled slightly. It was the first time someone faced such an outcast with kindness, so he wanted to see the girl one more time. The father guiding that girl was Count Vasilian, and also the true king of this underground world. Count Vasilian's identity was actually the true underground king of the underworld. Meanwhile, inside the villa, the three siblings were standing in a nervous row, listening to eldest brother Bel's serious questioning. Basil just wanted to take his sister out to play, but Bel shook his head. Hearing Carl claim he was enough to protect his sister, his words were like heavy blows, smashing into everyone's hearts. Sisha was not of the family's true bloodline. Despite Basil's rebuttal, Bel continued coldly. Sisha was just someone with no relation to the family. The girl's lips parted slightly, but she couldn't say anything. Bel had long said he would let her leave the family, though they all took care of each other. They were never family in the true sense. The girl clenched her fists. To think she was foolish enough to want to attend the banquet and even deal with that Ludin who insulted Vasilian. The count, in order not to lose Vasilian's face, went to great lengths to prepare the dress, yet none of it had anything to do with me. She thought Bel was a man of feeling, but now only a cold gaze greeted her. Sisha lowered her arms in dejection and annoyance. She had changed her plans on her own. Instead of leaving immediately after the investigation, she had to leave the family completely and become her original self again. Back in her room, Siesha's mood was uncontrollably low. She walked to the window, but dense black shadows emerged behind her. The moment the girl turned around, black magic instantly boiled over, and Duke Vasilian actually appeared right then. The man looked at her, reached out and flicked her nose. Why the long face? Was Hanlei scolded very badly by Bel? Sisha awkwardly touched the corner of her mouth. It seemed everyone knew about going to the underworld. Keen didn't say much, just picked the girl up. The one who scolded you is your brother, so daddy can only comfort you. Enveloped in magic, they instantly arrived at a garden. Seeing the garden filled with roses, their world seemed to freeze in an instant. The scent of roses permeating the air made the girl close her eyes involuntarily. Sisha suddenly opened her eyes, asking curiously where this was, but the man's answer almost made Siesha's heart skip a beat. This was actually the imperial palace courtyard. Treating the palace garden like a market where one can just wander in, Keen just smiled, reaching out to brush the dust off his daughter. This place is perfect for my daughter. Seemingly seeing the girl's worries and that she was sad from being scolded by her brother, Sisha remained silent for a moment before finally asking that question. Daddy, do you go back to the underworld? This question was clearly beyond the man's expectations. The girl just clenched her fists. It's okay if you don't tell me. Anyway, I'm not a Vasilian. For a moment, the wind around Keen seemed to spin. He picked up his daughter. Saying this could only be told to Sisha alone. He leaned close to the girl's ear. What daddy does in the underworld is take care of the people there just like I take care of Sisha. All the information connected together, and Sisha finally understood the Vasilian secret. That investigation report of hers and her special pattern. Even that time the three brothers appeared at the stronghold was because of Hyelin's involvement, and while in the underworld, the master's subordinates showed subtle loyalty to the brothers. Her own father was actually the master of the underworld she had researched. This shocking news caused Siesha's brain to crash instantly. At this moment, her heart had only one thought: run away quickly. Lithia finally discovered the truth hidden in the Black Forest. The culprit who tortured her mother pointed to the Holy Empire, the symbol of justice. Not long ago, Count Vasilian's identity completely surfaced. Sisha sat by the bed. She couldn't imagine the consequences of her identity being exposed, so the idea of leaving was born. Since Belle had already decided to let her leave, she might as well go with the flow to get rid of all this. Watching the little dog Shada jumping happily, the girl's face darkened. Stop playing, we're going to escape. The next day, little Sisha stood sneakily at the door eavesdropping. Before leaving, she had to gather a bit more useful information. The entire castle had been searched. Next was that most mysterious black forest in the territory, with the flickering of elf magic. The moment little Sisha landed, she felt a permeating dark aura. Fortunately, elves were the race with the strongest mental power. Recalling Keen's constant scent, it might be due to long-term entry into the Black Forest. Shada's barking disrupted her thoughts. A shadow like a ghost suddenly appeared before her eyes. The weirdness of this place was beyond imagination, but the reason Keen came here made the girl even more curious. Seeing that the monster was not aggressive, little Sisha decided to hurry and investigate. With the chanting of elvish words from her mouth, countless butterflies used for tracking spread rapidly to the surroundings. In just a moment, following the flickering light of the butterflies, little Sisha followed the guidance and discovered a hidden oasis in the dark forest. A strange object instantly caught her eye. The girl's pupil shrank. It was actually the late Countess' tomb. Looking at the fresh flowers and decorations on it, presumably for all these years, that man has been taking good care of it. And then the elf magic sent another signal. Following the girl's gaze, there was dense handwriting on a tree. It was actually all records of elf experiments, and this record was an experimental note from the Holy Empire from hundreds of years ago. The girl couldn't believe it. The Holy Empire, which symbolized order and justice, actually had such experiments. Even the one and only heresy inquisitor, Hyelin, was completely unaware. There was only one possibility. The experimental personnel were the highest leaders of the empire, personally involving the cardinals. A suspicion also formed in her mind. The elven race was formed of strong mental power, yet her mother had become the elf that everyone said went mad. She didn't dare imagine what that woman had actually gone through. Siesha's magic became uncontrollably frantic. I will definitely avenge you. Fortunately, the little dog's timely reminder restored the girl's calm. The information she currently held was that, luckily the Vasilians were not involved in this matter. But Keen's investigation, could it be for the same purpose as Siesha's? But there was no way to know. The only thing certain now was that she had no reason to continue staying in Vasilian. Siesha's fate reached a turning point here. She was also about to leave this place. That didn't belong to her anyway. The girl hid all her reluctance deep in her heart. She knew the end of identity exposure, her father's favor and her brother's tenderness, would vanish in an instant. But Belle's behavior went beyond everyone's expectations. His leaving turned out to be wanting to run away with Sisha. That afternoon, Sisha came to Belle's office. Although she had much to say, when the words reached her lips, she didn't know what to say. Belle saw his sister's expression, but also said nothing. Little Sisha walked in with slow, small steps. When am I to leave? The girl's head hung down completely at this moment, but she also clearly knew she had no reason to stay any longer. Belle's driving her away was a logical way for her to leave. If there's anything you want, you can take it. You can even have a sum of property. Belle's words were beyond Siesha's expectations, but she then showed a thoughtful look. Then I'll take the little dog. She only needed this little dog because she was alone when she came. Although she was about to leave, she still offered a brilliant smile. Thank you. Everyone in the Count's family had been very good to her. Belle froze for a moment, seemingly not expecting this to be Siesha's answer. His hand moved unconsciously, looking at the girl's tender cheeks. You must have had a bit of feeling for this place. Why don't you beg me to let you stay? If you feel it's a pity, you should at least show it. Siesha's calmness made Belle feel agitated for the first time, but the girl just responded faintly. What should I do? It's not like I can stay just because I want to. But fortunately, she was already used to partings. 10 years ago, when she was first adopted, just because she dirted a dress, she was heartlessly driven out of the house. That was the first time she had taken back something that didn't belong to her. That was Lithia's most helpless period. But the orphanage gates opened to her again. The young girl's wretchedness was fully visible, but the teacher didn't ask her why she came back, only seeing the girl's wretched state and hugging her thin body tightly. Why didn't you come back sooner? Although my ability is limited, raising you is not a problem. If you don't want to accept adoption, then stay at the orphanage from now on. This will be your home from now on. Hearing this, Lithia couldn't help but break down and cry. The teacher's appearance was the first ray of light in her life. She had once thought she would be a lucky child, but she didn't expect it to end all her hopes. Returning to being alone again, so for the scene before her, she had long been psychologically prepared. After a brief silence, Belle also made his decision. In 2 days, the Count and the two brothers will be away. Let's set off that night. Having found the answer, the girl was also ready. After leaving, she would drink the potion and return to her original form, letting the girl's appearance completely disappear from this world. The next day, Sisha leaned on the balcony, feeling the breeze. Having a certain answer actually made her feel a bit relaxed. It's just that maybe in the future she would miss this manner and these very good twins. Is the only regret not being able to say goodbye in person? She waved at them. Maybe they would meet again in the underworld in the future. But thinking of Keen's identity as the master, the girl recoiled a bit again. At any rate, she also wanted to confirm how everyone's lives were going. She hadn't noticed that since coming to the Count's house, her plans would inadvertently fall through. The agreed time soon arrived. In the early morning night, the girl had also packed everything early. The Count and the Basil brothers were not home. Her departure could be silent. Before leaving, Sisha saluted Belle once again, just as when she first arrived. Even though she was leaving, she was very grateful for the encounter during this time. But Belle just stared at her without a word. Only after a while did he say he would also go with her. This decision made the girl's head stall a bit. She questioned the other party in disbelief. Belle's answer went beyond her expectations. It turned out that in his collapsing world, the bouquet Sisha sent had also inadvertently become the light that warmed him. Regardless of the reason, he wanted to return that precious warmth to the girl. As for work, let his father, the Count, deal with the headache. Villain's eldest brother appeared in a cloak to run away with his sister and leave no evidence. He actually blew up the entire Count's mansion to let Sisha leave without a shred of lingering attachment. Belle, as the eldest brother, hid his tenderness deep in his heart. He coldly persuaded the girl to leave. Undoubtedly, being driven out of the house made the girl feel a deep sting. But it was just experiencing parting once again. This time Sisha chose to accept fate calmly. It was just a pity. This hard-won tenderness these days. The only regret was probably not being able to say goodbye properly. But on the night of departure, Belle actually packed his bags to go along. This decision left Sisha momentarily stunned. Since the Countess passed away, Keen had completely lost himself in the underworld. The government affairs of the entire territory were handled solely by Belle as the eldest brother. Belle gave a light laugh. Let Daddy take care of the rest. His purpose in following was only to prevent Sisha from being discovered too early, at least until the Empire's prayer meeting begins. Only then can the girl be completely safe. He didn't want Sisha involved in the storm of resurrecting the Countess. Sisha didn't object. The potion to restore her as an adult right now was very unstable, and further refinement would take some time. The two stepped onto the departing carriage. Looking out the window, Sisha also felt a bit of reluctance. Turning her head, she found Belle pulling something out. This familiar rune looked like some detonation device for something, but then she dismissed the thought. Belle probably wouldn't be so outrageous. The next second, a violent explosion swept across this land. Siesha's head was spinning. She couldn't believe the scene before her. The entire Count's mansion had been turned into a blaze, and for a moment she couldn't figure out how someone could cause such a big mess. At the same time, Keen also had some trouble. The endless assassins made him even more excited, but strangely, the assassin seemed to know his movements perfectly. Before he could think carefully about the reason, an urgent report of an accident at the residence came at this time. The fire caused by the explosion spread throughout the residence. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Upon hearing this, the man ordered Zihan to send Basil and Carl back, and in an instant, he arrived at the residence, watching the sky-high flames. But because of the surrounding crowds, he couldn't use black magic to handle it. Even if he put it out and dealt with the aftermath, it would consume a lot of his time. It seemed the assassins and the fire were meant to stall him. Almost instantly, he guessed this was Belle's handiwork. Upon hearing that even Sisha was missing, Keen was finally no longer calm. He walked inside on his own and pushed open the door to Siesha's room. The disappearance of that girl actually made the man a bit frantic. Where did my daughter go? Meanwhile, Belle had reached a hotel to settle in, preparing to set off again tomorrow. Sisha still looked well behaved, but having left the family, she changed her form of address for Belle to young master. This immediately caused Belle's dissatisfaction. You should call me brother. Although the girl didn't understand why Belle was so persistent about titles, she still nodded obediently. He had actually started to enjoy this life. On the run a little bit, Belle's care made the girl feel very relaxed. Since the Count was always busy with work, it was Siesha's first time seeing him with a sword. Speaking of which, the swords of the Villain family are very special. But Belle explained that these are all magic swords. They are magic swords specially forged for the heirs of the Count Villain's territory. It turned out that in the Black Forest of the Villain territory, there are unspeakable demonic creatures. Even the Empire knows very little about them. The public sees them as legends of the strange swords. The castle in the dark forest symbolizes the Villains as the ancient sons who control demonic creatures. The formation of a magic sword also requires a long period of continuous blood feeding. Possessing a magic sword this way also represents inheriting the duty to deal with monsters. The slaughter of monsters meant that for the Villain family who inherited this duty, it was no different from a curse. This secret made Siesha's eyes widen. But Belle just indifferently withdrew the magic sword. He was just giving an indirect explanation of why he wanted Sisha to leave. When it was time to sleep, Belle acted exactly like his father. Even their ways of coaxing someone to sleep were so similar. He looked at the girl's sleeping face, momentarily dazed. He always felt the time spent with Sisha was too short. At this moment, he had only one thought. If only you were really my sister. Siesha's escape plan received a major assist. To take his sister away, Belle didn't hesitate to blow up the entire Duke's residence because he was tired of his father's plans, placing his innocent sister in danger. The Duke's powerful tracking also followed immediately. Keen looked at Siesha's empty room. His heart was filled with inexplicable emotions. The setting sun spilled through the window. At this time, a vision of the late countess flashed before the man's eyes. The woman seemed to be smiling at him. The man's well-defined hand lifted slightly, but the moment he touched, the beautiful illusion vanished. Perhaps it was punishment for his failure as a father. Images of his daughter barged into his mind again. He didn't know when it started, but Sisha had already occupied an important place in his heart. Maybe it was the comfort of his daughter's fingertips brushing through the man's hair, or perhaps he had simply grown used to her presence day and night. Thinking of this, the man's fingers tightened slightly. He hated this kind of disappearance, just like when his wife passed away. Suddenly looking at himself in the mirror, a thought spontaneously arose. It's time to find my teacher. Duke Evroy was one of the 3 major nobles of the empire, and also a top-tier mage. Her built frame was even taller than an average male's, and she had a unique and charming voice. Mana kept her body perpetually young. Therefore, she frequently appeared at socialite cocktail parties. With her youthful appearance and great strength, there was only one person who could easily handle her. Evroy's eyes seemed to see a hallucination. Keen's sudden arrival gave her quite a scare. The wine glass in her hand was thrown, but the man easily dodged it. What happened? You couldn't have barged in here. Just to ask me to put out the fire at your house, right? Keen remained silent for a moment before stating the reason. His little daughter was missing and he needed help finding her. Keen knelt on one knee and took the woman's hand. The call of teacher almost made the woman freeze. As if she were seeing that young figure once again, this form of address cunningly bypassed all the woman's mental defenses. Left with no choice, Evroy proposed a condition. She wanted Keen's 3rd child, Basil, to be taken under her wing. In the woman's eyes, that child had extraordinary magical talent. Previously, because Basil hadn't agreed, she would reconsider him after this incident. Then Evroy looked up in confusion. Why be so heartbroken over an adopted child? But Keen did not explain. That fire needed cleaning up. He only sought out his teacher out of helplessness. After all, in the Empire, using black magic is an extreme taboo. Keen's black magic could easily attract pursuit from heresy inquisitors. But if Evroy acted, there would be no such concern. It only required the person's hair or a relative's blood. Keen said nothing. A sharp blade had already sliced his palm. Bright red liquid dripped from his palm into a bottle. Facing the woman's confusion, Keen explained that Sisha must be with the eldest son. Evroy took the bottle, and powerful mana emerged from her hand. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bel was sound asleep while holding his sister. The powerful mana fluctuations woke Sisha instantly. A massive magic circle appeared so abruptly on the ceiling. This special type of magic circle, Sisha recognized it in an instant. Tracking magic, but this color did not come from Keen's hand. Having mana capable of such large-scale, precise tracking allowed the girl to guess the caster's identity instantly. Red liquid followed Evroy's magical feathers through the magic circle, tracking down Siesha's location in an instant. The girl had no time to ponder the relationship between Evroy and Keen. She couldn't be caught now, and standard magic couldn't deal with the great mage Evroy. The next moment, a unique spirit power erupted wildly within the girl's body. She had to stop it before the magic circle was completely formed. The little spirit was very satisfied with her genius idea. A flower emerged in her hand. First, use sleep-inducing flowers to soothe the dreaming Belle. Now spirits are on the verge of extinction. Without powerful offensive means, they can only use defensive measures against enemies. But Sisha was different. Her attacks were without hesitation. The small-framed Sisha pulled out a giant axe. The sharp double-edged axe easily sliced through the floor. Let them experience the might of a great spirit. To find his daughter, the Duke paid the price in blood. And Evroy personally released a tracking spell covering the empire. On the other side, the sleeping Sisha also woke up with a start. Looking at the magic circle forming in the air, a bold idea was born in her mind. Childhood magic cannot escape a great mage's tracking, but the girl's identity was that of a unique spirit. A unique spirit force diffused around her. Siesha's past experiences had created her combat instinct. The next second, a massive double-edged axe appeared in the girl's hands. The girl's tiny body left the ground, swinging the weapon in a wide arc, then slammed it violently into the magic circle. The shattering of the circle caused a backlash for Evroy. Enduring the physical discomfort, Evroy looked at the scene before her in disbelief. The shattered magic circle made her mistakenly believe that by Belle's side was a mage as powerful as she was. At the same time, Sisha quietly landed. She slowly put away the weapon and plopped down on the floor. With this crisis resolved, Keen would surely seek other ways. But her body was still that of a child. Right now, what she needed most was a shield. A figure with great power gradually barged into her mind, but the other party's identity still gave Sisha a headache. Evroy now also knew who was by Belle's side, and she attributed all of this to Siesha's inadvertently revealed, astonishing magical talent. In Evroy's long life, this was the first time she had encountered such a being. Compared to the woman's excitement, Keen showed a glimmer of worry. He instinctively felt that his daughter was facing danger. Inside the Vasilian Count's mansion, Keen took out the letter Belle had left. The words frankly stated he wouldn't let his sister fall into danger for his father's plan and was willing to bear all consequences. While the 2 brothers were shocked by their eldest brother's actions, they were even more confused by their father's decision. This man, whose mind was full of resurrecting their mother, Sisha was supposed to be the vessel in the plan, but Keen's unexpected concern had completely exposed the emotions everyone had buried deep in their hearts, perhaps because of her resemblance to their mother. Every day Sisha spent in the Count's house was like a gentle breeze, smoothing the inner scars of their childhood. The debt to the child had somehow become precious. making them care about her uncontrollably. Rose, I seem to have become very strange lately. This child, who was supposed to be meant for saving you, makes me feel an unexpected closeness. The child's disappointed look even makes me feel uneasy. Most importantly, when I'm in front of her, I'm happy from the bottom of my heart. What would you say if you were by my side? And then, a voice broke the silence of the Count's mansion. Zihan burst in hurriedly, claiming he had found tracks of Sisha and Belle. He heard that a trial knight had taken them away. Upon hearing this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Haluan, the trial knight, was supposed to be on an opposite path, becoming true mortal enemies. But everything that happened caused this most loyal knight of the empire to begin a mysterious change. At this time, Haluan, unknown when, had already arrived at the Vasilian territory. The adjutant, Lex, analyzed the cause of the attack. He looked at Haluan. This man seemed to have become even more strange. As soon as he heard news of the fire, he led the knights and rushed over, even if it was for an investigation. He even brought the guards responsible for the church along. Isn't it too much? Lex keenly sensed the reason. Is it because of that adopted daughter of the Count? 5 years ago in the Holy Empire, Haluan was reciting the tenets in a confinement room. Because he had left his post without authorization, he was confined. Fortunately, Lex would often bring him some food, pity the weak and perform good deeds. Heelan's murmur made even Lex, as an inquisitor, look surprised. In the past, no matter what situation he faced, he would only strictly follow the dogmas. Human tenderness and kindness could not find a single trace in him. Lex didn't know what happened, but Haluan just lowered his head, and then gave a brilliant smile. He seemed to know how it felt to give without expecting anything in return. This was the first time Lex had seen such an expression on his face, and it was from this day on that Haluan became the Empire's youngest heresy inquisitor. He completed every mission perfectly, yet he could never catch the spirit, Lycesia, the which could be said to be Heelan's only stain. While everyone was on the way to the Count's mansion, Haluan keenly discovered a butterfly in the air. Instantly, the man set up a blockade. This magical aura, similar to Lycesia's, was invisibly pulling at his heart. Despite the adjutant's constant dissuasion, Haluan still walked forward on his own. The wind and rain guided him to a stop at a corner. Ahead, that familiar child's figure actually appeared. Haluan dismounted. Why would this child suddenly appear here? And this scene left Lex equally bewildered. Could what Haluan said about that shrewd daughter be true? At the same time, Sisha greeted him warmly. We meet again, Uncle Knight. She knew Haluan would definitely come. Last night she had sent him this butterfly. She believed that if it were him, he definitely wouldn't hand her over to Keen. After all, Haluan had an almost frantic obsession with her. Belle, standing by, was also curious about their relationship. Sisha then explained they met at the royal palace. Haluan is my knight. Belle looked at the other party suspiciously. Haluan often said the moment he saw Sisha. He felt a bit dazed, almost forgetting he still had an official, upright identity. He was the Holy Knight, protecting Sisha for her participation in the prayer meeting. Belle also felt a lot more relaxed now. The pressure from his father was truly not small. Now with a powerful helper, then his sister wouldn't have to live on the run anymore. Haluan didn't understand what had happened, or why the Vasilian heir would also appear here. Belle stated the reason frankly. He and his father had a conflict regarding Sisha attending the prayer meeting, so they escaped. Upon hearing this, Heelan's eyes narrowed slightly. If you are willing, I will have the temple provide help. Belle originally wanted to refuse, but since Haluan was Siesha's knight, he naturally had the duty of protection. Given the situation, it was hard to say anything else, and the girl's infiltration plan was declared a success. Taking this chance, she could finally start her investigation of the Holy Empire. The witch's hunting game actually made the cold paladin show signs of frantic affection. Inside the temple of the Frank Empire's capital, Sisha marveled at the luxury here. The Holy Empire's temples are spread across the continent, with countless priests and knights stationed there, representing the Holy Empire. Even kings do not dare to disrespect the temple easily. Sisha and Belle wore cloaks reserved for guests. Coming into close contact with the temple for the first time, she carefully kept her distance, fearing her identity would be exposed. A moment later, Haluan placed Sisha on his lap. The paladin transformed into a super dad. This scene made the attendants hardly dare to breathe. For a moment, Belle couldn't figure out the man's behavior. His request to take care of his sister himself was also politely rejected, and Haluan showed an unusual level of attentiveness. He gently tied a napkin for the girl, though he still seemed quite unpracticed. Sisha wanted to protest this treatment of her as a child, but she was no match for this cold knight at all. Helplessly, she was forced to accept it. After a brief meal, Haluan, who usually had no interest in anything, unexpectedly wanted to take little Sisha to see the flowers. To that end, he even sent Belle away. Sisha wanted to argue to Ly that she didn't like those things, but the scene of her buying flowers earlier had been seen by the man. The air suddenly went quiet. Haluan sighed. You don't need to be afraid of me. Didn't you say I'm your guardian knight? Upon my honor, no matter what happens, I will protect you. The gentle words seemed to have a kind of magic, as if the man would always protect her like this. A moment later, Sisha was held in the man's arms. She hadn't expected that one day she could take a walk with Haluan like this. Because of their identities, every meeting in the past was destined to be a life and death struggle. The two chatted idly. But suddenly the topic was steered towards Siesha's background. Do you still remember your biological father? Upon hearing this, Sisha suddenly blanked out. At the mention of Siesha's biological father, the man's face became so cold it seemed he wanted to tear him apart. She couldn't very well tell him that she herself was Lycesia. I don't remember. Sisha peeked at the other party's reaction. Heelan's lips parted slightly, seemingly thinking about how to speak. For the woman who was your mother, I will help you meet her. He really wanted to know why the Lycesia of those years had disappeared. When the young knight cleared out the enemies for her in return, he could no longer find a trace of that woman. His blood-stained hand brushed across the bedding. It seemed only the fragrance lingering in the air could prove the reality of the time they spent together. Heelan's narrative made Sisha feel an inexplicable daze. She didn't expect that for Heluan. All of this would be so absurd. As if speaking of something that never happened. Clearly she had only treated the man as prey. Lycesia had enjoyed this game of hunting, breaking Heelan's cold exterior, and engraving upon him the lure flower that belonged only to her. All of this was only because seeing his broken side was very interesting. Looking at the man's slender eyes, the girl suddenly realized she was still in the form of little Sisha. Fortunately, Heluan didn't know the turmoil in her heart. Sisha felt a bit guilty. With the words at the tip of her tongue, she still curiously asked him, "What was your relationship with that auntie?" The Inquisitor, who was supposed to be incompatible with the witch, had inadvertently become her subordinate. The man mistakenly believed that Sisha was Lycesia's daughter. Feeling abandoned by her, he was eager to fish for information about Sisha's father. Sisha instinctively wanted to explain, then suddenly realized she was still in the form of a child. She didn't expect to be caught up in gossip about herself one day. "So what exactly was your relationship with my mother?" But the words were halfway said when she was interrupted by an attendant. The attendant reported the situation, claiming the young master of Villainess seemed to know nothing. Hearing this, Sisha mistakenly thought the temple had interrogated Belle and glared fiercely at the reporting knight. The man quickly explained he only wanted to help inquire about news regarding Sisha's mother. They speculated that perhaps Lycesia met with an accident and only then abandoned the young Sisha at the orphanage. Little did they know that the Sisha before them was the once notorious witch herself, but in their eyes, Lycesia was not someone who would abandon a child. By comparison, they were still more interested in finding clues about the child's father. The curiosity that was about to burst forth, however, was met with Heelan's cold gaze. He was so scared that he quickly claimed he had business and ran off, but Heluan seemed persistent about Sisha's father. "If you remember anything about your father, please tell me as soon as possible." Sisha's head was about to blank out. She hadn't expected this would cause such a huge misunderstanding, but now was not the time to explain. She would tell them later. The days spent in the temple gave Sisha a sense of peace she had never felt before. Heluan seemed very busy, with almost no time to meet. She and Belle were given the best rooms in the temple to obtain external intelligence. Belle came back very late every day. During this period, they seemed to have grown much closer. Sisha would wander around the temple with Shada when she had nothing to do, or read books in her room until she fell asleep. In this way, a leisurely day passed. Night had arrived. He would coax Belle to sleep just as Keen used to take care of him. He was a little afraid he would get used to this feeling. A few days later, the peaceful days made Sisha feel uneasy. She really wanted to investigate something, but there was no useful information in the temple, and most importantly, intelligence about Keen had not arrived until now. Counting the time, even if Belle didn't tell him, he should have learned that the two were in the temple. Such a wait made Sisha miss him a little. Then she sprawled on the bed again, rolling back and forth, trying to stop her wild thoughts. Shada, in order to research the medicine to restore her adult body, needed aqueous gravity. The vast temple made her feel an inexplicable loneliness. It seemed she was back to when she was alone. All those years ago, Sisha dozed off and unknowingly it was late night. Heluan actually showed up with a serious expression. "No matter what happens, stay by my side." The confused Sisha then learned that Count Villainess had actually come. Heluan picked Sisha up. Following everyone's gaze, two black figures appeared at the door. The woman beside Keen was actually the top mage who had captured her not long ago. The top-tier mage, Duke Evroy. But this mage famous across the continent actually claimed Sisha was her niece, demanding the temple return the child to them. Hearing this, Sisha was full of questions, but Heluan remained expressionless. The temple never forced its guests to stay. Identity was never important in the eyes of temple knights. As long as Sisha was willing, she could leave at any time, but no one could force the child to do anything, even a duke of the empire. In order to get his daughter back, Keen, who was supposed to be a non-mage, did not hesitate to completely expose himself to the Holy Empire. Not long ago, Duke Evroy brought Keen to the temple. She lied, claiming to be the child's aunt, wanting to take Sisha away, but Heluan was a holy knight. Even if facing a duke of the empire, he couldn't act recklessly. He looked at Sisha. "Home has prepared your favorite doll for you." But Sisha hesitated. She initially wanted to investigate her mother's affairs, but unexpectedly felt the warmth of the count's family. But the subsequent inner conflict made her realize that she didn't actually belong here. Fearing her identity would bring disaster upon them, and also fearing she would sink into such a gentle trap, she eventually prepared to leave the Villainess family. But at this moment, Keen could no longer sit still. Ignoring Evroy's advice, he walked up to Sisha. Longing seemed to overflow from Keen's eyes. "Daddy is here to pick you up. Come home with me, my daughter." It turns out, after learning Heluan had taken the siblings away, this man who once deeply loathed the Holy Empire, despite opposition from Karl and Basil, decided to go to the temple alone to bring his daughter back. Evroy also rushed over at this time. Keen was a powerful dark mage. Powerful dark magic was a symbol of heresy in the eyes of the temple. His reckless decision could mean he would never see his beloved family again. Even the plan to resurrect his wife, run for years, would be completely ruined. To avoid such a situation, Evroy decided to go in person. Keen was forbidden from using magic in the temple, but now, the moment he saw his daughter, his magic couldn't help but become restless. Sisha originally thought she was just a tool to get the spirit crown, but the moment she saw Keen, she still couldn't control her emotions, and her cheeks turned red from internal conflict, but she still refused the request. Hearing this, Keen's tightly strung heart seemed to completely snap. He felt all of this in disbelief. And the dark magic inside him became even more restless. Even everyone in the temple looked suspiciously at this man they thought was an ordinary noble. From Keen's body, an oppressive aura that shouldn't be there was emerging. It turned out Siesha's departure was entirely her own intention. Seeing Keen about to lose control, Sisha also completely panicked. He was clearly the cold and ruthless master of the underworld. Why did he care so much about her leaving? Keen was like a father abandoned by his daughter, accompanied by madness, making Sisha even wonder if she should slap him to make him calm down. Dark magic appearing on such an occasion would cause major problems. She then looked at Heluan. The Holy Knight was watching everything happen coldly. Sisha suddenly thought of something. Was Heluan waiting for Keen to use dark magic? She had to stop all this. But Keen covered his face on his own, then slowly lowered his head. Eerie black waves actually began to emerge from his hands. He didn't understand why Sisha wanted to abandon him. Seeing this, Sisha pounced forward to stop him. If he completely released the dark magic, Heluan would definitely capture him. And just then, Belle had already thrown a punch at the man. Calm down. In the moment of seeing his daughter, the man did not hesitate to give up his long-running revenge plan, completely exposing himself before the Inquisitor Knight. Looking at Keen, who was about to go berserk, Sisha desperately wanted to step forward to stop him, but Belle instantly appeared in front of her. His fist smashed into the man's cheek. You'd better calm down. He was the eldest son of Vasilian, yet in the years Keen was absent, he had looked after Basil and the others in his stead. Seeing the man abandon the entire family, he could no longer suppress the emotions hidden in his heart. Seeing this, Sisha cautiously pulled on her brother's pant leg, saying she was tired and wanted to go back and rest. She had to end this tense situation as soon as possible. Duke Evroy was also relieved. Fortunately, Belle appeared in time. Under Helan's suspicious gaze, he picked up the dazed Keen. Before Sisha gave her answer, the three of them needed to have a good talk. On the other side, Belle carried Sisha away from the meeting hall. The scene just now made the girl's heart tighten again. Clearly this was the best outcome. Under Helan's protection, she should have left Vasilian. But the subconscious reaction just now completely exposed her true thoughts. Keen's soft call made her begin to doubt her decision. After returning to the room, Belle's body could no longer hold up, and he sat on the floor. He didn't know why he was crying. On one side was his beloved sister, on the other was a negligent father. Feeling the sobbing coming from beside her, Sisha could only respond with a warm hug for her brother. She knew Belle's internal conflict was to protect her from being hurt again. At this moment, the window suddenly burst open, and Basil and Carl actually climbed in through it. The two looked around the room. Big brother and little sister were living quite well here, but Belle put Sisha aside, and the long sword in his hand suddenly unsheathed. He wouldn't allow the two to take Sisha away again. This was the situation he had worked so hard for. The strong Carl also fell into silence. Seeing his eldest brother point his sword at them, he sighed softly. The big brother they hadn't seen for a long time had exploded. The Count's mansion even arranged an assassination just to take their sister away. Is this necessary? Hearing this, Sisha was also shocked. She didn't expect Belle to be such a calculating guy. Seeing the scene gradually become tense, Sisha immediately raised her hands high. Her waving arms made the two realize they shouldn't be so rude in front of their sister, and the usually gentle Basil also stepped forward quickly. During the time the girl was away, they all missed her very much. This was the first time the three of them had a sister. Such a gentle offensive almost made Sisha surrender. Carl also gave up his confrontation with Belle at this time and poked Siesha's cheek. Without the days she was here, the house seemed to have become lifeless again. Sisha originally thought she was just a tool to be used, but what was with their pitiful expressions? Just as she was thinking, her body suddenly left the ground. Belle held Sisha, controlling their baby talk towards her, but clearly the two were dissatisfied. Everything they said was from the heart. Carl advised his elder brother to think carefully. They only needed a plan to make their father give up his daydream while also keeping their sister safe. After all, resurrecting their mother, if it required Siesha's life in exchange, he surely wouldn't agree either. The wife the Count longed for, her true identity was actually an elf. Not long ago, to make their sister feel safe returning to Vasilian, the three brothers began to formulate a plan to stop Keen. In Carl's eyes, the mother their father had planned for years to resurrect actually had the image of a betrayer. It turns out, when young Carl wanted to make his sick mother happy, his small body collected flowers one by one in the garden. The small bouquet was filled with his love. He imagined countless times his mother's happy smile when she saw the flowers, but when he walked to his mother's door, he heard the argument coming from inside. Did I do something to make you angry? Keen's voice was full of pleading, but the response was only a cold reassurance. You did nothing wrong, it's just that I must do this. Upon hearing this, the pain in his heart made Keen lose his mind, and it also destroyed Carl's fragility. Keen's hands trembled madly. He didn't understand why two people who loved each other would have one leave the family on the eve of death. He pleaded repeatedly, but in return came an even colder answer. In the Countess' weak voice, there was unquestionable determination. Even if this departure would be forever, she insisted on leaving. The light from the crack in the door was like a sharp blade. The child only felt the home was broken. Clearly he could feel the love from his mother, yet he didn't know why in her last moments she was unwilling to stay by their side. His young self ran wildly outside until he fell to the ground. At this moment, he suddenly felt ridiculous. Maybe his mother had always thought that way. Even when receiving the flowers she used to like most, that warm smile might have just been a disguise. Carl clenched his fist. In his heart, maybe his mother didn't want to come back at all. Siesha's heart was also full of regret. She originally thought the Countess' death was a beautiful accident. Thinking about Keen's behavior now, maybe the two of them also had a secret past. In any case, the three still decided to bring their sister home safely first. They must stop Keen's plan. After all, if the dark magic used for resurrection was discovered, the entire Vasilian family being wiped out would only be a matter of time. The two vividly described it to Siesha. If she didn't go home, their father would definitely go berserk. Carl scratched his head. To be honest, he didn't favor his father's plan at all. Because his mother was not human, the already difficult magic would be even more unimaginable. Siesha seemed to catch some key clue. Wait, what did you just say? Who was not human? This sentence instantly piqued Siesha's interest. She was an elf herself, so she was naturally sensitive to information about other species. Just as Carl was rubbing his head, not knowing how to speak, Belle said the answer. The Countess was an elf. Hearing that besides herself and her mother, there were other elves in this world, Siesha was momentarily stunned, and at this moment, the entire ground began to shake violently. Siesha almost wet herself from the shock. It turned out that while the three were discussing just now, Duke Evroy keenly sensed Heelan's restrained aura. He was an inquisitor knight full of the scent of blood. Keen questioned the other party. What did you say to my daughter? To make her refuse to come home? Hearing this, Heluan sighed, stating it was all Siesha's own decision. It was only natural for the little girl to be scared by the Count's behavior, and the temple had the duty to protect the weak. So he decided to continue raising them in the temple. Hearing this, Keen's palm began to emit black magic as he slammed it down. What nonsense are you talking about? To fight for custody of little Siesha. Keen and Heluan actually chose to start a fight. Not long ago, Siesha unexpectedly learned the truth of the Countess' identity. It turned out as an elf. She was not alone in this world, but the impact coming from downstairs made the four of them completely panic. Upon hearing that Heluan wanted to raise Siesha on behalf of the temple, the black magic in Keen's hands began to leak uncontrollably. Irreconcilable enemies actually wanted to adopt his daughter. Anger made the veins on his face throb. Duke Evroy wanted to intervene, but Heluan continued talking to himself, saying Siesha's departure was itself an abandonment of him. Hearing this, Keen did not respond, but like this, he gave Duke Evroy a fright. He gripped Keen's hand tightly, trying to stop this man who was about to go berserk and use dark magic, but Heluan fell into thought. He had to make Keen show his true colors. Count Vasilian. If you want to kill me, just try it. The sword in Heelan's hand was fully drawn. The dazzling light was unbelievable even to Duke Evroy. It seemed battle was inevitable. Keen smiled faintly. The chains on Heelan's wrists seemed to have been itching to move against him for a long time, and now was clearly the best time. Don't hold back. Otherwise you will die. With that, Heelan's body had already moved. His sword drew a sharp arc, swinging rapidly towards Keen, and the magic array in Duke Evroy's hand was also ready. A violent explosion instantly swept through the temple. At the same time, the three brothers carrying Siesha were rushing towards the hall. The loud noise made Siesha full of worry. After a moment, they finally reached the top of the hall, and the scene below let Siesha know the seriousness of the matter. Duke Evroy's strength was unquestionable, but facing the temple's top knight, Keen exposing his identity as a dark mage was only a matter of time. Thinking of the truth Carl told, that the Countess was also an elf, then perhaps the truth she dreamed of was something Keen had known all along. Siesha pointed to the center of the battle and actually wanted the three of them to throw her over. This proposal terrified the brothers, but Siesha just said pitifully that after all, their argument was caused by her. Such a cute attack left Belle and Basil with no defense. Belle also felt that intruding into the center of the battle like this was very risky, but the situation was urgent. Siesha instantly jumped down from Belle and ran forward. Although it was high, this was the only way to resolve the dispute, but then the stone slab under Siesha's feet suddenly broke, and her body fell straight down. This terrified the three brothers. Siesha wanted to let nature take its course, but a magic array lit up from Basil's hand. He always felt this method was too risky. The next moment, golden magic wrapped around Siesha's body and pulled her up, but there seemed to be a deviation in the magical guidance. Siesha's body flew straight into the sky. How is this different from the plan? This scene made Basil's face turn pale. He quickly tried to fix the deviation of the array, but fixing the array again seemed to be too late. Both Evroy and Heluan in the field were stunned at the same time. At this time, Siesha's falling speed was beyond imagination. The originally calm Keen's hidden dark magic finally emerged completely at this moment. Heluan also released the chains from his wrists, wanting to catch Siesha before she hit the ground, but he still couldn't be faster than this man. Siesha opened her eyes again and found that Keen had held her firmly. I got you, my daughter. In front of everyone, Keen still exposed his identity as a dark mage just to save his daughter, and this Keen made Siesha feel it was unbelievable. Even Duke Evroy covered his forehead. The next moment, Heelan's chains instantly bound Keen, and he also snatched Siesha from his arms. The priest stationed at the temple also rushed over, but Keen remained unmoved. As dark purple magic flickered on the chains, Keen suddenly looked up. Surging magic swept through the temple. The priests who flocked in instantly lost consciousness, but Heluan was the only exception. Such a reckless move stunned both Siesha and Duke Evroy. Keen just spoke faintly, don't be nervous. I'm just providing a simple environment for our conversation. Hearing this, the chains in Heelan's hand slowly tightened. Keen proposed an unexpected deal. Let them leave. And he would provide information on the witch Lycesia, as well as reports on the Holy Empire's elf experiments. Just one simple sentence made Heluan lose his composure instantly. He instinctively thought Keen was talking nonsense, but such a serious scene made him also begin to doubt the truth of this matter. A moment later, the chains binding Keen slowly fell off, and their deal officially began. Keen injected magic into the priests' bodies, completely erasing their memories. This was the first time Keen had shown his full strength. Even Sisha marveled at how powerful he was. Let's stop here for today. Not long after, Keen would send the materials Heluan needed, but this temple was completely damaged. Next time they could only meet somewhere else. With that, he picked up little Sisha and prepared to leave with his daughter, but Heluan rejected this proposal. The confrontation between the two made Sisha feel awkward. Although learning the countess was an elf required further investigation, Sisha was still a bit worried. This might be the last chance to leave the Vasilian family. Looking at the smile on Keen's face, she realized she actually really liked this home. Siesha's hand touched the man's cheek. She didn't know how to speak, but Keen already knew Siesha's answer. That feeling of heartache pierced his chest again, but this time he chose to respect Siesha's decision. Keen kissed his daughter's hair, forcibly suppressing his inner reluctance, and handed her back to Heluan once more. Heluan wanted to explain the details of the trade date, but Keen seemed unable to hear anything. A moment later, Duke Evroy complained about the man's recklessness, but the figure appearing before him made him freeze slightly. Basil seemed to have gone through great torment. He stepped forward quickly, wanting to teach the other party a lesson on Basil's behalf, but Basil slowly lowered his head. Self-reproach and guilt seemed to completely engulf him. From a young age, Basil had no interest in magic, and Keen's answer was that he wanted them to do what they liked. It seemed that as long as they grew up safe and happy, that was a father's only wish. It wasn't until the moment Basil used magic just now that he realized how ridiculous he was. Such a clumsy display of magic. Yet it almost killed his sister. Therefore, he sought out Duke Evroy, asking to be taught magic. Helen's secret past finally revealed the game of hunter and prey with switched identities. It seemed only he was persistently pursuing that reward from Sisha. Not long after Keen and Heluan made their agreement, he took the others back to the castle, and little Sisha was also taken by Heluan, thinking that the next time Keen and Heluan met again, she would have to make a decision. Siesha's little face couldn't help but turn sour. The carriage had already traveled far. She truly didn't understand where this guy was taking her. Sisha curiously looked out the window. It seemed she had arrived at Helen's private residence. This castle was restored beyond imagination. Soon after, the hot water washed away Helen's fatigue. Returning to his residence after a long time allowed him to completely relax. The heavy responsibilities of the temple's clergy required every strand of hair to be clean. Any external defilement, including scars and blemishes, had to be purified by divine power. But as Heluan revealed himself, the scars on his back were starkly evident. It seemed those doctrines had never concerned him, or perhaps these things held a special meaning. Heluan stood in front of the mirror, slowly unbuttoning his clothes. He gazed intently at the rose tattoo beneath his collarbone, lost in thought. Soon after Heluan finished bathing, a servant came looking for him. Keen's methods had made these servants completely lose their memories of last night. Upon learning that the Holy King of the temple was looking for him to complete the deal with Keen, Heluan could only tell the Holy King to wait patiently. Such a reply scared the servant speechless, but at this moment, he only cared about the child he had brought back. Thinking of the life Sisha had never mentioned, Heluan unconsciously clenched his hands. Lycesia, this perfect shadow in his memory. Their reunion a few years ago. As a judge, he was ordered to capture the witch, but this woman escaped his chains. It turned out Lycesia was just curious who had come this time. Seeing the familiar face under the cloak, Lycesia also showed an unsurprised expression, and while Heluan was stunned, Lycesia's restraints also firmly bound him. Lycesia gently stroked the man's face. As a reward then, her kiss completely stripped Heluan of his resistance. If you still want a reward, next time, I will mark you as my prey. And the identities of hunter and prey were completely switched at that moment. So, during this long period, Heluan continuously pursued clues about Lycesia as well as that unknown reward until Siesha's appearance, which made him feel an inexplicable sense of betrayal. At this time, Sisha was enjoying the special treatment reserved for children. Her appearance, similar to Lycesia's, earned her the joy of the maids. Seeing this, Heluan grew even more displeased with Lycesia. To leave the child in such a dangerous family, he decided to convince Sisha not to return to the Vasilian family. The next moment, little Siesha's happiness came to an abrupt halt. Helen's piercing blue eyes were already upon her. It was then that the maids remembered. It was time for the child's nap. The maids were about to prepare, but Heluan interrupted them. A moment later, Sisha also didn't expect that she would share a room with Heluan one day, and Helen's explanation for this was that the people of the Vasilian family were too dangerous. All of this was to protect Siesha's safety. Meanwhile, on the other side, Helen's disrespectful refusal of the Holy King's invitation filled the Holy King of the Holy Empire with anger. Perhaps he needs a memorable lesson. Heluan completely shed his cold exterior, transforming into a doting father figure in front of Sisha. The two, who were only supposed to be taking a nap, surprisingly woke up at dawn. Little Sisha wiped the drool from the corner of her mouth and looked at Heluan, only to find that he had already woken up at some point. Heluan originally wanted her to sleep a bit longer, but little Sisha was completely awake. Seeing this, Heluan could only tuck Sisha back in, but when he saw the girl's face again, "Your mother must miss you very much too." This sudden sentiment made Sisha curious again. From Helen's perspective, what kind of relationship did the two of them have? "So, what's your relationship with my mom?" This was the answer Sisha wanted to hear then, but couldn't get. She had expected an unexpected answer, but Halluin stammered for a long time or said that they had no relationship, seemingly noticing the girl's dissatisfaction. If I had to say, I'm your mother's prey. But such a flippant remark was clearly taken by little Sisha as him talking nonsense. A smile curled at the corner of Heelan's lips. He seemed amused by his own words. Yes, after all, I'm much taller than Lycesia. Halluin rarely smiled. This was a side of him Sisha had never seen. He reached out and lightly tapped Siesha's nose, declaring that next time he saw Lycesia, he would definitely switch their hunter and prey roles. Hearing this, Sisha was speechless. Halluin then pulled Sisha into his arms, and then fell back into a deep sleep. So, this emotional Halluin, was he real? In these past few days, Halluin had become obsessed with walks, eating, sleeping, and reading fairy tales. Just as he had said, Halluin had been inseparable from Sisha these days. Although Sisha felt helpless about her invaded personal space when the peach cake was brought to her mouth, she couldn't resist taking a bite. And the smile on Heelan's face became even more obvious, even giving the illusion of a full-time stay-at-home dad. Just then, someone pushed open the door and entered the dining room, claiming that the Holy King of the Holy Empire had arrived in the capital of the Phelan Empire. Hearing this, Sisha also felt a sense of unease. It seemed that the moment she heard this news, the atmosphere became strange. A moment later, Sisha went to the corridor alone. The news of the Holy King's arrival made her think of something. She had once found similar wounds on Halluin, which seemed to have been sustained in the Holy Empire. But Sisha quickly stopped her wild thoughts. Taking advantage of this rare moment of solitude, she had to quickly call Shada to confirm the completion of the potions. As the teleportation magic lit up, Shada excitedly appeared before Sisha. After looking around, he finally took out a briefcase. It was full of potions to make Sisha return to her adult form. To be safe, he had even tried various formulas. Sisha casually picked up a bottle of yellow potion, uncorked it, and gulped it down. But the scene seemed to fall silent. Why isn't there any reaction? A moment later, Sisha looked at the empty bottles scattered on the floor, falling into despair. After drinking more than 10 bottles of potion, she only felt unwell. But why hadn't her body returned to normal? Still young, she couldn't unleash her full power. In this state, it would be difficult for her to face the upcoming crises. A moment later, Sisha could only think of one solution: to return to Vasilian and restart her plan. The disappearance of the Countess made Siesha's background mysterious once again. Not long ago, due to the failure of Shada's potions, he went back to prepare new ones. And little Sisha was also considering her next move. No matter what, staying with Halluin was full of danger. But fortunately, she didn't have to do anything now. Soon she could return to Vasilian. After all, without the potion to return to her adult form, staying with Vasilian was the best option. However, a child who wouldn't grow up would always arouse suspicion. Sisha decided to come up with a solution within a year. Meanwhile, children on the capital's streets were playing. As a toy rolled away, a white figure picked it up and threw it back to the joyful children. The Holy King of the Holy Empire had arrived. His silver armor gleamed beneath his elegant robes. Noticing Heelan's approach, the Holy King subtly pulled down his robes, and even the Empire's foremost judgment knight had to kneel and salute when meeting the Holy King. The Holy King smiled and looked at Halluin, saying it had been a long time since they last met. Hearing this, Halluin sighed softly. He didn't understand why, after only requesting a week's leave, the Holy King would travel so far to come. The Holy King's explanation for this was that, since Halluin began working for the temple, he had never rested. He had simply come personally out of concern. Furthermore, he had received letters from Duke Evroy and Count Keen, apologizing for the misunderstanding of destroying the temple and donating a sum for its reconstruction. Therefore, the Holy King requested Halluin to return the child as soon as possible. Looking at Heelan's expression, his habit of pursing his lips when unhappy was still as it always was. Halluin was the Holy King's finest creation, but this finest sword now possessed its own will. Without a response from Halluin, the Holy King did not want to dwell too much on such a minor matter. He told Halluin to handle it himself, then turned and left. But at this moment, Halluin looked up at his departing back. Sinners who defy justice, even if that person is the Holy King, are no exception. A week quickly passed, and it was finally the day of the appointment with Keen. After telling Sisha to wait at home, Halluin planned to go alone. But as everyone knew, Sisha was never an obedient child. After using magic to become invisible, Sisha secretly followed him. A moment later, Halluin successfully obtained the Holy Empire's experimental records on elves. Whether it was the signature or the report, everything followed the imperial protocol. Even Sisha was secretly shocked. Keen straightforwardly stated the fact that his wife was an elf. After losing her memory and being abandoned in the Black Forest, she then met Keen. Keen originally didn't know his wife's identity until before her death. She unleashed her final elf power and then slowly disappeared. Therefore, Keen hoped to join forces with Halluin. But Sisha, who had heard all this, found it somewhat unbelievable. She thought Keen was lying, because an elf on the verge of death couldn't make such a move. An elf power outburst requires immense strength, unless Keen's wife was the elf queen. Sisha, watching the two converse, gradually lost interest. If Halluin and Keen joined forces, it would indeed greatly help her plans. Sisha believed Keen's wife had used a trick to deceive the eyes, so it was highly probable that what Keen saw wasn't truly his wife's death. Thinking about these things, Siesha's heart was filled with doubts. Why do I resemble the Countess so much? Even though Keen and the Countess hadn't met yet when I was born. Therefore, Keen can't be my father. Besides, my mother and the Countess are completely different. She wouldn't have gone mad and then died completely, would she? Sisha then realized that behind the mad elf was a mother's deeply etched love. After the former Lycesia left the orphanage, she searched alone for traces of her parents, and it was at this time that she first heard the story of the Wind Elf. According to legend, the mother was surrounded by the corpses of animals and hunters. Until her death, she kept singing something towards a certain direction. In Lycesia's memory, the only thing she remembered was the lullaby her mother sang to her. She had originally thought her birth was filled with hatred and gossip. Only now did Cecia understand that her mother's love was far deeper than she had imagined. Having understood this point, little Cecia's steps became lighter. She thought about finding a reason to return to Vicilian first. Just then, Keen abruptly appeared behind her. "How have you been lately?" This sudden concern left the girl momentarily unsure how to respond, but Keen's monologue still didn't stop. Seeing the girl's lack of reaction, he mistakenly thought Cecia didn't want to see him now. Such a humble Keen was a sight Halluin had never witnessed before. But at this moment, Cecia slowly turned her head. Keen visibly brightened. But he still stammered, "Don't force yourself. It's okay to lie." These words made Cecia lower her head, but the small girl suddenly rushed into the man's embrace. Like a truly reunited father and daughter. What Cecia didn't say was, she was worried that her departure would become permanent. Little Cecia hesitated for a long time, finally asking, "Can you come home, Dad?" The simple word "Dad" almost made Keen's eyes well up. This was something he had longed for, but Keen had one more request: that Cecia would never leave again. Sensing the man's wish, perhaps it was a lingering trauma from a precious person leaving his side. Perhaps it was the lingering trauma of losing a cherished person. Who knew that the shadowy, creeping dark mage would suddenly start acting spoiled at this moment, saying he couldn't live without Cecia. Halluin, standing by, couldn't bear to watch any longer. He quickly claimed that taking the child was not part of the agreement. After all, seeing the two of them being so clingy made Halluin quite jealous. At this moment, Cecia finally bravely stated her thoughts. She was going home. If Halluin missed her, he could come to her home and take her away anytime. Cecia's gaze finally made Halluin shyly turn his head away. Seeing that the matter was likely decided, Halluin slightly lowered his head and gently kissed Cecia's hand, indicating that he would visit Cecia. This was the duty of a guardian knight. Keen's dark magic enveloped the two of them. After Cecia's brief wave goodbye, she also disappeared from Helen's residence. In the carriage, Keen looked at the sleeping Cecia in his arms. He recalled the scene of their first meeting. The girl then was filled with a fearlessness similar to the Vicilians. She was like the perfect child prepared for him by heaven. But everything that had happened before no longer mattered. He now clearly knew he couldn't live without this girl. Cecia seemed to have a long dream. Her mother's lullaby accompanied her growth throughout the dream. After waking, Cecia realized she was already back at the Vicilian family home. Basil and Carl immediately embraced their long-lost sister. Cecia's return was like a gift from fate. This also made the girl believe that she must have completely integrated here. Lycesia's suitors had even lined up all the way to France not long ago. Cecia's return delighted her brothers. They all eagerly felt little Cecia's soft cheeks. Before the count set out to welcome the girl back, Carl and Basil were already impatient, almost ready to storm Helen's residence. After a brief embrace, Cecia also wondered about Zyber's whereabouts. This eldest brother hadn't shown up since she returned. These days, Zyber had been working for the family behind the scenes, and just then, the room door was pushed open from the outside. The long-awaited Zyber finally made it home in time. The moment he saw Cecia, he reached out as usual and gently stroked the girl's head. "Welcome home." With this, Cecia's return ceremony concluded. With the Vicilian family as her backing, the girl once again had a legitimate reason to openly enter the Holy Empire. She planned to make good use of this time to thoroughly search for the secrets of the elf experiments. Keen's request was also silently remembered by Cecia. If possible, she also wanted to help Keen successfully obtain the elf crown. Not long after, an ocean-going ship cut through the waves, rapidly heading towards the Valen Empire. The Crown Prince of Scar Kingdom's excitement was palpable. It turned out he also had a near-mad obsession with Lycesia. Now, learning that Lycesia had disappeared, he couldn't wait to travel thousands of miles to search for her whereabouts. The sky was clear at this moment. Seagulls circled overhead. Looking at the portrait on the wanted poster, which was stained with a large bird dropping below, Scar was completely speechless. Fortunately, his subordinates strongly restrained him. Otherwise, judging by his posture, he was about to fly into the sky to punish the seagull. Inside the cabin, hearing her brother shouting, the Princess of Scar Kingdom couldn't help but sigh. This brother, who was unilaterally infatuated, left Princess Olanskar completely speechless. Fortunately, her purpose for this trip was merely to attend the prayer meeting. The Holy Empire's prayer meeting would select a child full of divinity. Scar Kingdom believed that the Holy King would prioritize selecting children who could provide immense wealth. Therefore, the wealthy Princess Olanskar didn't consider any competitors. But her intuition told her something terrible might happen this time. Perhaps that banished sorceress would reappear. On the other side, little Cecia suddenly sneezed without warning. "Who is talking about me?" Just then, Basil took out a handkerchief and gently wiped the girl's nose. In this past week, Basil, following Duke Evroy, had made rapid progress in magic. From childhood, it was the first time he had ever been so passionate about anything, only to help his sister overcome all dangers. The last accident had taught Basil a harsh lesson. Just then, the doorbell rang. Basil scooped up Cecia and ran. Before the girl could figure out what was happening, a familiar figure appeared before them. He had come to prepare their banquet attire. I thought it was something important, but the girl suddenly remembered something. With Carl's reminder, today was Duke Evroy's birthday banquet, but Cecia had completely forgotten about it. The Vasilian family shed its former decadence, appearing before everyone in a brand new light. Not long ago, the cat-eared shop owner observed what could be called the greatest clothing art being born on perfect models. Even Basil exclaimed that it was stunning even with a casual wear. The two exchanged fashion tips, as if they had found a soulmate in a vast crowd. This scene left Carl completely bewildered. Although little Sisha also felt this reaction was overly dramatic, she couldn't help but take a couple more glances before leaving. He really dressed everyone up wonderfully. Having these people as family made the upcoming life also fill the girl with anticipation. Not long after, Duke Evroy's birthday banquet was held on time. Duke Evroy, as the host, was as hospitable as ever. Today's banquet was to commemorate the prayer meeting, so the main theme of the decorations was the forest. Although Duke Evroy was renowned in social circles, more people were still looking forward to the appearance of the Vasilian family. Keen's superior appeared, accompanied by the countess. Although he appeared unassuming, he secretly investigated everyone who had spoken with the countess one by one, with a gentle exterior but a cold heart. No one would have thought he would be so madly infatuated with a woman. His heart must have been full of loneliness. But he, who had finally found love, now could only live the rest of his life relying on fleeting memories. Foundation. Duke Evroy still remembered everything that happened then. The man no longer possessed his usual composure. "Teacher, please help me." Even when his parents passed away, Keen, who had never shown weakness, was completely broken in that moment. And on that very day, Duke Evroy broke the rules for mages, allowing Keen to become the black mage he was now. So many years had passed, but Keen still couldn't accept his wife's death. Just then, the man beside them claimed that he and the Vasilian family had ordered clothes from the same designer. Mentioning this at the banquet would inevitably invite comparisons from others. Thinking of this, Duke Evroy couldn't help but get a headache. "Your appearance isn't very good." Then he would definitely work hard to turn Basil into an outstanding mage. Meanwhile, the Vasilian family's carriage was already approaching. This banquet was exceptionally important for the Vasilian family. They had to demonstrate the family's strength to maintain their family's influence. The one who had stolen Hada's hat before would surely appear at the banquet as well. Both benefactors and enemies would be firmly remembered by little Sisha. She was ready to face this banquet. A moment later, seeing the arrivals at the door, most of the conversations among the crowd ceased. Although Duke Evroy and others knew Keen would take this banquet seriously, the moment they appeared, they still captivated everyone present. The Vasilian family, shedding their former casualness, appeared before everyone in a brand new light. Meanwhile, on the other side, the pursuit had left the woman covered in wounds. At this moment, she prayed for the birth of the elf queen. The Little Elf Season 2 is finally back. When the long-silent Vasilian family reappeared at Duke Evroy's birthday banquet, their exceptional appearance immediately drew everyone's attention. Little Sisha originally wanted to hide in Keen's arms and get through it, but unexpectedly, Duke Evroy scooped her up, even conjuring a magical puppy in his hand, using his lifelong skill for charming children. But Sisha saw through his intentions at a glance. Why are mages so obsessed with taking on students? It seemed her previous act of breaking the tracking spell had given Duke Evroy a small. Seeing the girl's extreme reluctance, Evroy had no choice but to hand her back to Basil. A moment later, little Sisha was searching the entire room for the thief who had stolen their clothes. Just then, the entertainment portion of the birthday banquet began. Duke Evroy had invited a famous singer from the capital. The beautiful singing immersed everyone, but Sisha noticed in the lyrics a legend about the elf queen presenting her crown to the holy king. May sacred glory be immortal forever. Praising the gods and idolizing the holy king seemed to be ingrained deep within the hearts of the nobles. People's joys and sorrows are not the same. Sisha only found it a bit noisy. The elf queen presenting her crown to the holy king was an event from nearly 100 years ago, but Sisha had clearly seen documents stating that the Holy Empire had already begun elf experiments at that time, so the queen's crown must have been forcefully taken by the holy king. Thinking of this, Sisha felt somewhat nauseous. Seeing his sister not feeling well, Basil quickly took her outside for some fresh air. Carl, who had intended to follow, was stopped by Basil. Fearing that all three siblings disappearing together would arouse suspicion, Carl was forced to stay and hold the fort. In the courtyard, with the noisy sounds gone, Sisha clearly felt much better. Worried that Sisha might feel unwell again, Basil decided to take his sister to rest. For a while, as he spoke, he didn't forget to praise the dress his sister had prepared. Earlier, many people had asked him where it was custom made. He secretly hoped it would last until the end of the banquet and not get damaged. After all, the outfits they had prepared in advance had been stolen, and this one was something his sister had painstakingly acquired. Just as he was thinking, a figure quickly approached the two of them. The juice in their hand flew directly towards Sisha. Fortunately, Basil was quick-witted and shielded his sister. The sudden turn of events left Sisha momentarily stunned, but she instantly noticed the hat on the person's head. It was a hat from Hada's shop. Hearing the person excuse it as just a slip of the hand, Sisha immediately wanted to chop them with an axe, but Basil fell silent. His hand involuntarily clenched. The gentle smile that usually graced his eyes was gone. The man originally thought it was just about a piece of clothing and that he could just pay for a new one. A chilling laugh, breaking through the air, instantly swept past his ear. "I'm really not interested in mere money." Basil's tone was calm, but Sisha clearly knew this was Basil's insane fury, and she instantly felt that something very bad was about to happen. Fortunately, Basil hadn't completely lost his sanity. After all, it was Duke Evroy's birthday banquet today, and causing too much of a commotion would draw attention. The next moment, he splashed the person back. "I'll let him off this much." The robust man was almost defeated and quickly ran off crying into the distance. While not many people were paying attention, Basil carried his sister to the fountain, running. No marks had gotten onto his sister's clothes, but Sisha noticed that Basil's expression was wrong. He was preparing to leave the banquet and go home. Basil tried his best to maintain a perfect appearance in front of outsiders. He didn't want to be mocked again for his sloppy appearance, being called a child without a mother. Little Sisha's hand clutched her brother's sleeve. "Stay with me." Looking at the flower bed nearby, Sisha had an idea and asked Basil to wait for a moment. Little Sisha stealthily went to the plum garden. The magic in her hand flickered freely. The next moment, Sisha came running towards Basil with a bouquet of flowers. This should cover it. But she lost her footing and tumbled forward right in front of Basil. The strong Basil helped his sister up with magic and then used the bouquet to cover the stain on his chest. The girl's optimism completely shattered the darkness within Basil's heart. The closer he was to his sister, the stranger he felt himself becoming. It was like learning magic he wasn't interested in before. In short, it was very troublesome. It seemed he truly couldn't do without Sisha, his sister. Meanwhile, Duke Evroy was introducing various nobles to Keen, although he had already gained the support of Halen, an Iden judge, to ensure Sisha could be sanctified at the prayer meeting. Befriending Marquis Milton, who was on good terms with the cardinal, would be a safer bet. After bringing the person over, Duke Evroy also left some space for them to talk. However, Keen always felt that Marquis Milton's gaze was full of hostility. The next moment, the living room door was abruptly opened. A boy, covered in dirt, rushed in. Seeing this, the Miltons quickly tried to soothe their child. Upon learning that it was a conflict with Basil and Sisha, Keen's lips curved into a smile. Meanwhile, the two siblings also rushed over. They had already been worried the boy would complain. And sure enough, it happened. The boy vehemently accused Basil of threatening him with magic. But Basil's provocative attitude made the boy complain again. But Sisha raised her hand. "You don't think only you have a father, do you?" Upon learning that the other party had bullied the two siblings and even likely stolen their custom-made attire, Keen completely lost interest in befriending them. But at this moment, Marquis Milton didn't forget to add fuel to the fire, directly stating that Sisha was a child of unknown origin. Realizing he had made a slip of the tongue, everything was already too late to stand up for his daughter. Keen, with just a light remark, dragged Marquis Milton into a chaotic situation. Not long ago, Marquis Milton's undisguised malice had even directly questioned Sisha's background. Hearing this, Keen's expression changed, and then he unhurriedly revealed the truth. He directly stated that the boy, despite being Marquis Milton's child, resembled his secretary, Baron Keller, more. In the eyes of nobles who valued propriety, Keen's words contained blatant humiliation. The Marquis turned to look at his wife, only to find her face had already turned pale. He instantly almost suffocated. With the situation taking such a turn, the Marquis only wanted this woman to disappear forever. Seeing that the matter was exposed, the Marquise also became desperate, stating directly that she did it all for the Marquis lineage. Marquis Milton had been married 3 times but had never sired a child. This time, it was all due to the Marquis himself. Sisha watched the scene before her in bewilderment. Keen truly lives up to his title as Lord of the Underworld. Just one piece of information completely crushed his opponent. In a flash, Keen carried Sisha and Basil and walked outside. To avenge his sister, Basil decided to make Marquis Milton's scandal the headline of tomorrow's newspaper. Hearing this, Sisha couldn't help but feel that when dealing with outsiders, everyone truly had a belly full of mischief. After Basil left, Keen still wanted to take Sisha to tour the Duke's estate, telling her that she could take anything she liked. He acted as if it were their own home. It was then that Sisha understood the extent of Keen and Duke Evroy's friendship. They had both saved each other in their respective lives. Keen's black magic had even been taught by the Duke. A few years ago, Keen had lost control of his resurrection magic, causing his magical power to rampage. Although Duke Evroy was very displeased with Keen's actions, he indulged him once again, suppressing Keen's rampaging magic. Although Keen spoke nonchalantly, Sisha still understood the danger involved. If it went uncontrolled, perhaps an entire portion of the continent would be lost because of it. Keen's purpose in saying all this was only to let Sisha know that, if anything happened to him, Sisha, as his daughter, still had someone to rely on. No matter what happened, Duke Evroy would take good care of Sisha. Sisha clenched her small hands. Keen's words always hinted that something would happen to him. A few days later, Sisha looked at the newspaper. Marquis Milton's scandal was everywhere. As the matter concluded, the prayer meeting was now approaching, causing the Vasilian family to fall into busyness once again. Keen was busy meeting nobles during the day and dealing with underworld matters at night. Today, he even had to go to the Black Forest to deal with magical beasts. The brothers had also been frequently out recently. Just then, a maid delivered a letter. A letter from the Holy Empire, announcing that the Saintess prayer meeting was about to begin. Bell smiled slightly, holding little Sisha. He was also a little impatient to see his sister wearing the elf crown. After Bell left, Sisha decided that while everyone was out, she would go to Hada's place. But then, an urgent knock sounded at the door. The person claimed to be from the capital security team. Hearing this, Sisha scurried to open the door. She observed the person through the crack in the door. The man in front of her looked like a black bear. Seeing the person's anxious expression, and with her brothers and Keen all out, Sisha had no choice but to meet the person as a Vasilian. The man's name was Theonemia, and the Nemia family was one of the 3 great noble families of the empire, known for their rigorous conduct and swordsmanship. It was then that the person stated their purpose. He needed a member of the Vasilian family to provide identification for an arrested individual. Sisha, astonished, couldn't believe Carl had been taken to prison. The girl hid her astonishing beauty willingly transforming into a diaper warrior. But Toscar, as an ardent admirer of elves, still noticed little Sisha. The two ardent admirers would mistakenly turn into a battleground about to ignite. Not long ago, with the approaching Saintess prayer meeting, Keen and her brothers became exceptionally busy. But just then, the capital security team knocked on their door. Carl had actually been arrested. Although Carl was often impulsive, Sisha still didn't believe he would do anything outrageous. Regarding this, Theo had only heard that Carl had a conflict with a mercenary. Since he was not yet an adult, his family needed to come forward to prove his Vasilian identity. But now, only Sisha was home. The helpless girl could only follow Theo to the detention place. Theo, who was adept at taking care of his younger siblings at home, also held little Sisha with ease. Soon, the two arrived at the capital security team headquarters. Theo had seen Carl in the eastern part of the empire. As the young master of the Vasilian family, Theo believed there must be some misunderstanding. Sisha climbed down from Theo's hold and after a few quick steps, quickly found the imprisoned Carl. Seeing his sister, Carl immediately became flustered but quickly realized his sister must have come to rescue him. He had thought Carl only had a simple dispute with a mercenary. But unexpectedly, the person he had been protecting was a foreign prince also attending the Saintess prayer meeting. Hearing this, Sisha instantly felt a great sense of foreboding because Carl was facing the serious accusation of insulting royalty. The ceremony for the Saintess prayer meeting was held at the Saintess, and the Valen Empire was the nearest port. Therefore, even for networking, this place would gather countless royals and nobles from various kingdoms, and the royal families eligible to attend the prayer meeting came from powerful nations. Even Keen couldn't treat them lightly. Thinking of this, Sisha could only take out a handkerchief and wipe the corner of her eyes. She figured she would probably only be able to visit Carl here from now on. Seeing her reaction, Carl was speechless. He insisted that the other party had made the first move. Carl had originally wanted to change the leather on his sword hilt, which was why he had come to the best weapon shop in the entire capital. But the sword whose hilt he was about to replace was coincidentally coveted by a royal family member attending the prayer meeting. Carl's sword was a weapon he would never sell, no matter what. But the other party's guards, relying on their status, immediately attacked Carl. However, Carl was naturally not someone to be trifled with, which was how things ended up like this. Little Sisha helplessly asked about the other party's identity. Upon learning it was the Crown Prince of Scar Kingdom, she almost transformed, because the other party was actually Lysisia's fervent admirer. No wonder little Sisha always had a peculiar intuition that she was being dragged into an unpleasant situation. But Toscar's voice came from behind at that moment. Hearing that Carl was detained for insulting royalty he had specifically come to visit. As he spoke, he casually looked at Carl. Can we now reconsider the ownership of that sword? But even though little Sisha was burying her head, dripping with fear, Toscar still noticed her presence. Seeing this, Sisha tried to slip away like a target of bandits, but before Toscar could stop her, Sisha was already lifted into the air until he saw Siesha's face, the cultivated elf lady. Toscar was completely captivated and couldn't move. Sisha knew things would turn out like this. The next moment, Toscar quickly claimed that the one who took Carl was a force monitoring him. So, I just want to take this child back to my kingdom. Hearing this, Sisha slowly formed a question mark. Even Carl was stunned. The next moment, he felt that the charge of insulting royalty was too light. Just make it a charge of killing royalty. The three of them were stunned by this sight. They watched helplessly as Carl kicked open the iron gate, completely disregarding the consequences. On one side was a noble from their own country, on the other was a royal from another kingdom. This gave Theo a massive headache. Toscar said he would treat Sisha well. After all, rather than being an adopted daughter in a noble family, it would be better to become a princess of the royal family. At this, Sisha also raised her hands high. She also thought being a princess was better. Hearing this, Toscar's face showed relief. However, Sisha decided that she first needed to go home and bid farewell to her father. These words immediately won Toscar's approval. He said he would send a carriage to the count's house shortly to pick her up, then turned and left. Looking at Carl's face, full of despair, Sisha, however, clenched her fists. You guys run quickly. It turned out that Scar was a nation founded by vagrants, so plunder was their proudest method. To prevent the conflict from escalating, Theo immediately decided to take the two siblings away from the Capital Security Bureau. There was also a secret passage, which was the back door hidden by a magical illusion before them. As the three ran wildly through the streets, they didn't know where to go for a moment. As the Prince of Scar, he would surely search the entire city for them. After a moment of thought, Sisha quickly had someone in mind who could surely beat Toscar Black and Blue. Toscar had constantly entered and exited the underworld just to propose to Lysia. This also directly led to him being regarded as a follower of Elfnia and pursued by an Aiden judge. When Sisha and the two others arrived here, they instantly relaxed. The luxurious decorations made Theo curious about the owner of the mansion. Since the identity of an Aiden judge was classified, Carl still advised him to put away his inquisitive thoughts. Although Carl didn't know what kind of deal Halen and Keen had made, it was generally a family matter based on Sisha. Carl immediately became vigilant again. Upon hearing his sister was going to her room to rest, Carl immediately denounced Halen's unscrupulous methods, even preparing a private room for his sister. Meanwhile, Halen was still attending to official duties. The maid said he would return before sunset. Sisha thought to herself, Scar Kingdom, which controls pirates, is very wealthy, so the mercenaries they recruit are also very powerful. Rather than waiting to be exposed, why not send them to hell right here? After throwing out the bait, Sisha immediately began preparing traps. The next moment, the diaper warrior finally revealed her true form. Feeling the power surge through her body, she was eager for the prey to take the bait. Meanwhile, Upon learning Sisha was missing, Toskar immediately flew into a rage. He was about to gather people to search when the next moment he received news of the child, but upon hearing it was at the Holy Knight's mansion, the anger that had just flared up was instantly extinguished. Everything related to the Holy Empire was extremely dangerous. Last time, he had only expressed his love to an elf and was imprisoned and interrogated by a Holy Knight. In the end, it was the current emperor who used his power to secure his release. Although he didn't want to get involved with Holy Knights, Toskar decided that he would take the child away no matter what. A moment later, Toskar led his mercenaries to the mansion. The Golden Knights, however, were already lined up, as if waiting for war to descend. The next moment, a familiar figure made Toskar tremble uncontrollably. Halen slowly walked in. He would not allow the man before him to get any closer to Sisha. Just then, a butterfly caught their attention. Both of them simultaneously recognized that it was Lysisia's exclusive magic. Halen, as if reacting to a trigger, threw all the chains in his hand, binding Toskar tightly. When he saw the butterfly gently land on Toskar's shoulder, panic flashed in Halen's eyes, and the force in his hands instantly intensified. A bewildered Toskar hadn't even reacted, but was once again pulled into the elf's illusion. Lysisia's brand, Halen, an Aiden judge, was willing to become the elf's private property. Not long ago, Toskar, leading mercenaries, arrived at Halen's mansion, but he found the knights already lined up and ready. Until the elf magic symbolizing Lysisia appeared, Halen could no longer suppress his impulse and firmly bound Toskar. A bewildered Toskar hadn't even reacted and in the blink of an eye, was dragged back into the illusion. Magic. Illusion is a mysterious magic exclusive to elves, capable of giving people an incredibly real experience. It is said that people trapped in it could never return to reality, but Toskar, seeing this, showed no panic at all. As long as he could see Lysisia, he was willing to be trapped in it forever, but a strong sense of suffocation instantly interrupted his search. The magic butterfly was originally only meant to bring Toskar into the illusion, but they didn't expect Halen, following the binding chains, also barged into the space. The next moment, both of them simultaneously looked towards Lysisia. After many years, Lysisia finally appeared before everyone once again. Toskar, seeing this, recklessly expressed his love. However, Halen's unexpected intrusion still affected Lysisia's plan. The next moment, Lysisia turned and pinched Toskar's cheek. Contact with an elf and trespassing into an Aiden judge's residence. Presumably these charges should be enough to get him imprisoned in an Aiden interrogation room, right? Thinking of this, Lysisia prepared to brand him with an indelible mark. Her raised hand, however, was firmly grasped by Halen. Can your brand be given away so casually? Halen's proximity made Lysisia somewhat flustered. The elf's brand in her hands was as casual as stamping a document. The next moment, Halen roughly threw Toskar into a carnivorous plant. This unusual act left Lysisia puzzled as well. Halen remained silent for a moment before slowly speaking. Let me help you. I will hide you in my residence until you are completely safe. His possessiveness was only fully revealed at this moment. Lysisia's disappearance and Siesha's appearance made Halen feel like an abandoned puppy. Therefore, he was eager for the girl to give him an answer. What exactly was their relationship? After branding him with an elf's mark, she had suddenly disappeared again. It wasn't until Lysisia clearly saw Halen's complex expression that she realized how ridiculously different their perspectives were. But her silence, in Halen's eyes, became a sign of avoiding the answer. The next moment, Lysisia felt the warmth on her lips. Halen's kiss left Lysisia momentarily bewildered about what was happening. In the incredibly realistic illusion, Halen finally spoke the longing buried deep in his heart. Put me first. Lysisia, I want to be the most important person among all those you've kissed. Halen grasped her hand and brushed it over the brand on his chest. He would never allow Lysisia to abandon him and leave. Meanwhile, at the Capital Security Bureau, Basil's magic was on the verge of going out of control. He declared that if Sisha and Karl suffered even the slightest harm, he would destroy the entire security bureau. Just then, a military attendant brought news. I heard the mercenaries of the Scar Kingdom have all been mobilized. It wasn't until Bell drew his standard weapon that the attendants realized how serious the situation was. It was the first time he had seen Bell personally wield a sword. Karl finally realized that Siesha's existence was Valkyrian's true essence. Not long ago, the moment Halen first kissed her, Lysisia was momentarily dazed. She seemed to recall him saying something like Halen being the only prey. She only remembered telling Halen to lock Toskar in the interrogation room and then hastily closing the illusion. So when she met Halen again at dinner, she, having returned to her child form, was still somewhat dazed, but Halen kept staring at her, which made Sisha feel a shiver down her spine. Seeing this, Karl immediately hugged his sister tightly, while Theo simply thought Sisha was too cute. Thinking of this, Karl also believed that they should indeed thank Halen for his help. To this, Halen replied that he was merely fulfilling his duty as Siesha's guardian knight. And next time, if something similar happened, they should just come to him. Theo, however, remembered that Karl also seemed to be a master swordsman, but Halen grew somewhat silent upon hearing this, stating directly that Karl needed to work harder to improve himself, as he was currently not qualified to protect Sisha. What else could he do besides constantly hiding like this? Previously, Karl had never understood why Basil, who had always detested magic, had suddenly begun to diligently study it. Even when Basil spoke of the helplessness he felt when he almost caused his sister's death, Karl still couldn't fully comprehend. Born into the Valkyrian family, he had a natural disregard for mortals. It seemed as if everything came easily to him. His gifted swordsmanship, like Keen's, had never known defeat in the underworld. And even such a Karl A certain emotion quietly arose within him at this moment. A voice kept echoing in his heart. During those times of helplessness, if I were a little stronger, would the outcome have been different? Thinking of this, Carl instinctively wanted to refute Halen's questioning but closed his mouth again. It seemed that he was indeed as Halen had said. If he had been able to deal with the mercenaries alone and leave, his sister wouldn't have been put in danger either. Thinking of this, Carl could no longer restrain himself. He desperately wanted to possess the ability to protect his sister. So, what should he do next? After dinner, Theo, as the captain of the security team, bid farewell and left. He heard that the Valkyrian children were currently causing a ruckus at the security office. Meanwhile, Sisha was secretly observing. At Halen's suggestion, Carl was to learn swordsmanship here for a day. Although Halen was a good swordsmanship teacher, seeing Carl bruised and swollen, Sisha still felt a little uneasy. Sisha suddenly had an idea. Humans usually become happy when they receive flowers. The next moment, a fresh flower appeared in her palm. In a flash, she appeared before Carl with healing medicine and flowers. Carl, seeing this, almost burst into tears. Since he first started learning swordsmanship, his mother would also, just like Sisha now, bring these things. Although the pain in his body persisted, but upon hearing the girl say she was going to beat someone up to vent her anger for him, the pain seemed to become insignificant. It wasn't until this moment that he truly felt Sisha's arrival was Valkyrian's true gift. Little Sisha was about to set off for the Holy Empire. It was only then that she realized the luxurious lineup of the escort party. Not long ago, Theo returned to his family but was reprimanded by Marquis Nemia. As the commander of the security team, he had made a mess of the incident. As punishment for Theo, he was asked to resign from his position as commander and join the Saintis Guard to gather intelligence on the Valkyrian family and atone for his mistakes. Theo's expression darkened upon hearing this. His harmonious relationship with the security team members had made him regard the place as a refuge, escaping all the pressure from his family. Just then, a voice called out to him. Senel knew of his father's anger but was only concerned about his brother's injuries. A moment later, upon hearing that Theo was about to join the Saintis Guard, he finally just sighed helplessly. In his eyes, Theo possessed the Nemia family's most precious quality. What others saw as dullness was Theo's purest kindness. Therefore, his father's plan made Theo, who was rashly approaching the Valkyrian family, face an indescribable threat. A few days later, little Sisha, who had racked her brains trying to stay away from Halen, eventually helplessly returned to Halen's residence because Carl wanted to, before the prayer meeting began, once again receive Halen's swordsmanship training. But this despicable judge actually made it a condition that Sisha must be brought along. And thinking of this, the girl's cheeks twisted up again. She had once asked her brother the reason for his efforts. Carl's answer was very simple. Previously, there was also a child in mom's belly. If they had been born safely, they would have been as cute as Sisha is now. He didn't see Sisha as a substitute for anyone. He simply wanted to protect his only sister. Thinking of this, Sisha only felt a bit bitter. The warmth of a home made the elf feel a rare sense of attachment, but she still had to leave eventually. A moment later, little Sisha found an opportunity to sneak off and meet Zada. She tried out all 31 types of potions she had developed, making her body shrink, turning into a cat, even growing wings. But the only potion that could restore her to her adult form still had no effect. She pondered for a moment and finally realized that there was a problem with her own body. Seeing this, Zada immediately rushed into Sisha's arms. Even if Sisha had to live with an infant's body forever, he would always protect Sisha. And Sisha also decided to have Zada stop drinking and return to Valkyrian with her. Fortunately, her brothers didn't question the sudden appearance of the dog. Soon, it was time to depart for the Saintis assembly. As the number of accompanying personnel was limited, the rest of the servants were also about to return to the Valkyrian castle. Basil held his sister. Everyone had also changed into Holy Empire attire. Regarding Theo joining the guard, Keen did not say much. Little Sisha had already seen through Marquis Nemia's arrangements. She had intended to be extra careful, but Halen, at this moment, arrived leading 3 other Star Knights. A black mage plus an Aiden judge, and the Nemia family's outstanding commander. Little Sisha suddenly realized that her escort lineup was far too luxurious. However, Halen and Keen's bickering still made little Sisha feel like something was off. Soon, the convoy departed from Hilda. Meanwhile, a group of black-clad figures seemed to be hunting something in the forest. This time, the prey seemed very cautious. Where could a lost elf be? He meticulously carved suffering, allowing it to blossom brilliantly among thorns. The little elf finally revealed her true form. Not long ago, the 10-day Saintis prayer meeting was approaching. Little Sisha would undergo trials in the Holy Empire, and the prize for the victor was the Elven Queen's crown, a holy relic. Therefore, before the prayer meeting, various factions vying for the crown had already formed alliances. It was clear that the Aiden judge, leading the Knight Order, was in the same camp as Keen. Little Sisha originally didn't want to get involved in the power struggle between the priests and knights, but given the current situation, she could only let nature take its course. After all, the most important goal of this trip was to uncover the secret of the elf experiments. Meanwhile, the escort team was moving quickly. Keen stated directly that Halen had not gained Lysisia's favor. He, as an Aiden judge, was merely experiencing unrequited love. Such provoking words. If it weren't for their shared objective, Halen would have almost turned hostile on the spot. The moment he first saw the elven crown, he felt it would surely suit Lysisia. Therefore, he was eager to see little Sisha wearing the crown. The opinions of the priests within the empire were about to converge, and Halen, as part of the knight faction, still needed Keen's strength to seize the crown. Just then, Both of them simultaneously noticed someone rapidly approaching. A team of over a dozen people made Halen instantly realize they were cunning hunters. An escort team protected by holy knights. Very few dared to approach them rashly. A strong surge of magical distortion permeated the air, indicating that the prey was also fleeing rapidly towards them. The next moment, an elf, covered in wounds, appeared before them. The elf magic symbolizing its identity made Keen instantly recognize it. Meanwhile, little Sisha inside the carriage suddenly sensed something was wrong. An overwhelming sense of fear that wasn't her own seemed to completely engulf her. Almost instantly, little Sisha hurriedly shouted for everyone to get away, but it was already too late. The illusion, released by the elf burning its magic, was already complete. Little Sisha's body plummeted rapidly within the illusion. What met her eyes was a desolate scene the girl had never seen before. This was little Sisha's first time encountering another elf. In the illusion, she could clearly perceive the other's emotions. This elf was clearly going mad. The next moment, Sisha, falling rapidly, was caught by Keen and pulled into his arms. The moment he caught his daughter, Keen finally let out a sigh of relief, but that strong emotion made little Sisha eager to leave this place. Keen, hearing this, also quickly began searching for a way to leave. An elf's illusion could only be left after fulfilling the elf's wish. The hunted elf perhaps wanted them to rescue him, but Keen was still full of doubts. Why would an elf trust them? To this, Halen merely glanced at Sisha. Perhaps it sensed a kindred spirit, but only he knew the truth of this. Halen chose to remain silent, and then, both of them simultaneously looked aside. The hunters of the prey were approaching them through the passage. They were just a hair's breadth away from catching a very rare prey, but the moment the sound rang out, little Siesha's body couldn't stop trembling. The emotions from the illusion's owner echoed in her mind like a whisper of despair. The torment of being hunted completely awakened the pain Sisha had hidden deep in her heart. The ugly faces of past hunters, the bloodstains spreading beneath her feet during her escape. What did she ever do wrong to endure such endless despair? Was it because she was an elf? But this was her path, her journey. A thorny rose, grown by stepping on the countless bodies of hunters. The next moment, Lycesia, an incredible scene appeared before everyone's eyes. Sisha finally revealed her true form, exposing her elf identity. A thorny rose fully bloomed from her palm. This scene, however, left Keen in a daze. He couldn't believe it that the child he had adopted purely for the elven crown actually had the same experience as Wang Qi. But despite countless questions, there was a more pressing matter at hand. He couldn't just stand by and watch little Sisha continue to suffer. Keen's hand gently covered his daughter's eyes. Let me deal with these filthy hunters. Leave them to daddy. Everything will be all right. In just an instant, the hunters were neatly laid out. This was the first time Keen had, in front of Halen, displayed his black magic abilities, but to his surprise, Halen calmly delivered the finishing blow, decisively eliminating the last survivor. The Aiden judge, who strictly deterred the continent, was now allowing two individuals to kill recklessly. And then, Keen noticed his daughter's trembling body. Mistaking it for fear, he quickly moved to comfort her. But unexpectedly, Sisha looked at him with tears in her eyes. This scene made both Keen and Halen a little flustered. Ever since the orphanage was destroyed in an incident, Lycesia had struggled to escape pursuit and live. Until her elf powers awakened, she finally had enough strength to escape the threats. She had thought her full efforts would be enough to wash away her life's misfortunes. But after many years, she was crying again. Keen nervously spoke, asking his daughter the reason for her tears. Sisha shook her head, and only after a while explained that she just felt it was embarrassing to cry like a child. But in truth, she didn't know the reason for her tears. She just felt something now. It was strange to show her elf powers again. She presumed Keen had already discovered she was an elf, meaning she was about to lose her warm home again. Thinking of this, the girl's tears flowed even more freely. Keen, seeing this, just remained silent, gently patting the little one's shoulder. It doesn't matter what Siesha's identity is, just like Sisha also accepted her equally strange father. Right, my daughter? Meanwhile, Halen, regarding the deep father-daughter bond before him, had finally reached his limit of patience. Now, shouldn't we first think about how to dispel the illusion? Keen then thought of something. As an elf's daughter, she would surely be judged by Aiden. Halen, however, stated directly that he already knew Sisha was an elf. After all, isn't she Lycesia's daughter? Sisha, hearing this, panicked slightly, but fortunately, although Keen didn't understand, he didn't dwell on this small flaw. To protect her few remaining aliases, Sisha changed the subject, wanting to try and dispel the illusion, although she didn't know how to calm the elf. Her elf instincts, however, guided her subtly. It's all right now. No one will bully you again. The thorny rose instantly transformed into specks of light and floated into the air. The elf's illusion easily dissipated in the hands of another elf. As the desolate scene disappeared, Sisha, however, felt a longing for her mother. If she had been there at that time, even if all attempts to save her failed, at least her mother's departure wouldn't have been filled with so much pain. She wanted to stay by her side forever. As if sensing something, Keen's arms, holding Sisha, slowly tightened. His gaze, when he looked at Sisha, was always so gentle, like looking at a bright, precious treasure he had lost and found again. Unlike the romance in people's eyes, the Earl and Countess' release from custody was a clash between a manipulative man and a naive, sweet woman. In a dream, Sisha seemed to hear singing. She followed the sound, only to find her mother leaning against a tree trunk, singing a lonely elf song. Sisha felt a thrill. Even her eyes involuntarily opened, only to find two heads staring straight at her. Carl and Basil were carefully examining their sister, loudly conspiring. Has little sister been scared into having problems? Sisha, hearing this, was very cooperative and immediately asked who they were, which scared the two of them badly. Basil pondered for a moment, then smiled brightly, stating he was the person who loved her most in the world. Sisha, hearing this, immediately started to laugh. So it's my brothers. Carl, feeling tricked, immediately plopped down onto his sister's bed, but Sisha then felt her eyes were a bit dry. Thinking of how she had cried like a child, she wished she could immediately crawl into a hole. She had initially been worried about her elf identity being exposed and how she would get along with everyone, but after listening for a while, the two brothers in front of her seemed unaware. It was the first time in so many years she had met another of her kind, but it made Sisha vaguely worried. She heard that elves, for their safety, never stepped out of the elven valley of death, so why did that elf appear? Thinking of this, Sisha simply asked Basil about the elf situation. Talskar, however, stated that his father was asking him some questions. In Basil's eyes, the elf had hurt his sister, so Keen, as a father, would definitely not let it slide. Meanwhile, Keen was in a different state of mind. Everyone knew that Earl Valkyrian, in the Black Forest, fell in love at first sight with and married his elf wife, but the Earl and Countess' first meeting was entirely different from the romance in people's eyes. In the desolate Black Forest, the sudden appearance of a nobly dressed woman kept Keen on high alert. Fortunately, there was no indistinct aura, but Keen didn't let his guard down until the woman raised her head, and her gaze struck Keen's heart forcefully. The elf before him had clearly lost all her memories. Keen patiently explained the elf's situation. He originally wanted to ask about her origins, but Lucia couldn't remember anything. The horrors of the Black Forest extinguished Keen's desire to question her, but he quickly dealt with the surrounding monsters. His fingers touched Lucia's throat. If you don't confess now, I might do something bad. Looking at Lucia's fair cheeks, Keen thought this tactic was perfect. The other party should now be scared, and then honestly confess, but Lucia grabbed Keen's hand. Keen's threat was completely useless because she didn't sense even a hint of malice from the man. After looking around, the elf seemed to finally realize the surrounding danger, but as she tried to stand, she found her legs completely without strength. Fortunately, Keen quickly caught her. With just a brief touch, Lucia smelled a faint floral scent from the man. She wanted Keen to let go of her first, but the next moment, she stumbled and fell to the ground again. Looking at the strange elf before him, the situation became a bit awkward for a moment. A moment later, Lucia finally gathered her courage. Take me to a place with flowers. Her somewhat naive assertiveness made Keen lose his temper for a moment. Lucia's gesture didn't seem like a pretense. With the intention of investigating suspicious clues, Keen decided to take Lucia back to the castle. This one encounter Keen could never forget, even to this day. And at this moment, the elf before him had quietly awakened. Keen tried his best to appear friendly, but with just one sentence, the elf completely stunned Keen. Did you take Her Majesty, the Queen? It turned out that behind Siesh's fate lay the unspoken hopes of all elves. A short while ago, facing the elf who only recognized that he had taken the elf queen, Keen's body instantly stiffened. Is this Siesh's true identity? The elf stared fixedly at Keen. If not for this man before her, that child should have returned to the elven kingdom and ascended the throne of the queen. Now, the elf only wanted to see that child as soon as possible. Keen's serious expression immediately softened. He would, of course, arrange for them to meet, but before that, he wanted to get that answer first. What to do about the secret of Sisha being an elf? Basil and Carl then brought little Sisha to the confinement room. Sensing the magical aura inside, Sisha couldn't help but feel a little worried. A moment later, Keen opened the door. Seeing Sisha, his face instantly brightened. Sisha slept for too long, making her old father terribly worried. Even after learning his daughter was an elf, Keen's attitude didn't change at all. But when he learned that Siesh's first request upon waking was to see that elf, Keen's expression seemed a little sad. He immediately suggested going in with Sisha. After all, Sisha had almost been harmed because of him a short while ago. With things said this way, Sisha could only agree. She thought to herself that some things would have to be said secretly next time. Regarding the elven kingdom, Siesh's heart was always full of doubts. Perhaps her inability to grow into an adult was also related to this. A moment later, seeing the elf still bound by chains, Sisha hurried forward. Just as she was about to ask, she noticed that the elf before her had actually been hypnotized by Keen. Meanwhile, Keen shamelessly knelt down. The elf seems tired. How about we come back next time? Sisha, hearing this, became even more curious. What exactly was Keen trying to hide? Siesh's hand slowly approached the elf, seemingly having a special effect on the elf. Just like last time, following her instincts, the next moment, elven magic permeated Siesh's hand, slowly enveloping the elf before her. The elf, who had been afflicted by dark magic, had her eyes regain their vigor. Little Sisha excitedly looked on, but the elf's spontaneous exclamation of Your Majesty, the Queen, completely stunned Sisha. Who is the queen the elf is talking about? Regarding this, Keen hurriedly asked his daughter what she had just done. But before Sisha could respond, the now conscious elf became agitated again. You have blinded the queen's eyes. Regarding the elf queen, there was only one official record on the continent. Hundreds of years ago, the elf queen presented her crown to the Holy Empire. Keen originally wanted to take Sisha away first, but he didn't know the girl's stubborn pursuit of the truth. She really wanted to talk to the elf, even using a pleading tone. When he saw his usually sensible daughter showing such deep emotion for the first time, Keen finally sighed. allowing Sisha to pursue the answers she sought. Only then did the elf calm down. Looking at the girl before her, she began to recount past events. Hundreds of years ago, a human-initiated invasion completely destroyed the peace of the elven kingdom. To retrieve their kidnapped queen, the elves continuously fought against humans, but they, who valued peace, were not familiar with combat. Finally, with the passing of the elf queen, their tragic efforts also came to an end. The queen and all elves were connected to each other. Feeling the queen's passing, they originally wanted to find and protect the new generation queen who inherited powerful abilities, but years of fruitless searching forced the elves, to avoid human hunting, to enter an elven realm built of illusions, to survive. As time passed, the absence of the queen caused the elves' power to gradually fade. Until then, a strange aura appeared in the human world. This aura constantly disturbed the elves' minds. The elf before them was one of those officially tasked with investigating. When he awoke, he found himself in a completely unfamiliar environment, with injuries on his wrists and ankles from escaping. Having lost all his memories, he initially even thought he was human. It wasn't until he instinctively used his elven power while being pursued that he gradually recovered some memories. But strangely, from that moment on, his elven power completely lost control. It wasn't until recently, when his elven identity was exposed and he was pursued, that he followed the sensed power of the queen and arrived here. He clearly realized that this might be his last stroke of luck. Lucky enough, before death, to meet the elf queen again. When the identity of the elf queen was revealed to the public, the truth, sealed by time, made Sisha uncontrollably agitated. A short while ago, the elf earnestly requested Sisha to return to the kingdom, but the only response he got was the girl's silence. According to records, it had been several hundred years since the previous queen passed away, which didn't match Sisha's birth time at all. Yet despite being full of doubts, the resonance among elves constantly lingered in her mind, refusing to fade. Sisha clenched her fists. It turned out she was never an abandoned child, but she had already missed out. Years of fleeing had already transformed her into someone completely opposite to the peace-loving elves. Sisha stubbornly believed that if her true nature were discovered, the elves would surely be very disappointed. Moreover, she now had an unfulfilled promise with her father, but one day, she would return. This was a promise to the elves. Sisha originally just wanted to ask about restoring her body to an adult form, but then, Keen's dark magic began to surge. Sisha, realizing it was too late, had her elven power instantly erupt from within her. Keen originally wanted to stop it, but the chains binding the elf were already crumbling piece by piece. Feeling the elven power from the queen, the elf took Sisha's hand and gently kissed it. This is the elf kingdom's past, though only small. He hopes your majesty can be happy forever, and be careful of this man. A man as insidious as a venomous snake. The last two sentences left Sisha bewildered. When she came back to her senses, she met Keen's anxious gaze. The man carefully examined the elf, kissed arm, frantically pleading with Sisha not to leave, until Sisha gave an affirmative reply. Keen pulled his daughter into a tight embrace. Don't use your elven power in front of others. Sisha's soft-heartedness towards others made Keen instinctively fear his daughter would be harmed. In front of Sisha, he, as a father, also harbored a deep vulnerability. Meanwhile, Halen clearly sensed the breaking of the chains. He looked towards the direction of the mansion's depths. Keen's dark magic couldn't possibly undo the chains. Therefore, it could only be that child. The incident of capturing an elf alive had already been reported to the Empire. Yet Halen decided that even if he faced torture, he would handle everything for Sisha. That evening, Halen returned to the mansion's depths and pushed open the door, only to find wine bottles scattered across the floor and a completely drunken Keen. This was the first time Halen had ever seen him like this. Not a hint of his usual shadow. Instead, he looked like a proper drinking buddy. But when Halen opened his mouth to ask about the elf condition, the light in Keen's face instantly vanished. He really wanted to kill the elf, but he was afraid of incurring his daughter's disgust, simply because he said his own daughter was actually the elf queen. Halen, hearing this, instantly sobered up. If Sisha was the elf queen, then what about Lycesia, who also possessed powerful strength? What was going on with that? But before he could think too much, Keen began to ask about the reduced damage of holy magic against elves. Before the countess passed away, he had desperately cast spells countless times, but still couldn't save his beloved wife. Keen swirled his wine glass to make his daughter stay. It was difficult for him to do it alone. Therefore, he needed Halen's help. Little did he know, this was also Halen's idea. The two men reached a tacit understanding. 2 days later, a carriage swiftly moved through the forest. Little Sisha poked her head out, looking at the unfamiliar scenery before her. They had arrived at the Holy Empire. The Elf Queen's first appearance caused the Empire to be filled with praises for Aiden. A short while ago, Sisha finally arrived at the Holy Empire. The borders of the Holy Empire were surrounded by towering, strong walls. It was only open to outsiders during New Year's and prayer meetings. Halen had already entered the city yesterday. As for Keen, days of heavy drinking had left him listless. As the carriage slowly approached, Sisha discovered all the priests and knights respectfully bowing. A luxuriously dressed old man appeared. He was undoubtedly Lion, the Holy King of the Holy Empire. His appearance made all visitors dismount from their carriages and respectfully bowed. Sisha blinked, secretly observing. She had thought that someone with the strongest holy power would remain as young as Duke Ifroy. Sisha followed the crowd, slowly bowing. She thought she wouldn't attract attention, but unexpectedly, the next moment, the Holy King picked her up. Lion seemed very familiar with Sisha. He had already heard the child's name countless times from Halen. Hearing this, Sisha instantly felt something was amiss. The Saintess prayer meeting was bound to cause chaos, and if the Holy King showed favoritism towards her, it would be like making her a common enemy among all the candidates. Sisha felt that something was strange. Just then, a familiar yet strange melody reached everyone's ears. They all looked towards the deeper parts of the empire. Though the unfamiliar language prevented them from understanding the lyrics, they could still feel the happiness within it. But the Holy King at this moment was no longer as amiable as before. His body trembled menacingly. "Bring Halen to me." The sudden turn of events left Sisha unaware of what had happened. Just a moment later, the Holy King, with excellent facial control, returned to normal. He placed Sisha back on the ground and introduced the lingering song to the crowd, calling it Hilda's Anthem of the Heart. The song, imbued with holy power, would resonate throughout the empire as a welcome to the visitors. But Sisha felt her heart race, as if responding to the song's content. Suddenly, it was as if she realized something. This song is the call of the Elf Queen's crown. A moment later, everyone reboarded the carriages. The call of the elf crown made Sisha once again speculate about her identity as the queen. The scene from earlier resurfaced in her mind. On the Holy King, she hadn't felt even a trace of holy power. His abnormal attitude towards Halen. Sisha made a bold guess. Perhaps the Holy King had, from beginning to end, relied solely on Halen's holy power. Even the elf crown might be controlled by Halen's power. Keen held his daughter in his arms. Carl originally wanted to ask the reason for the Holy King's attention to his sister, but Keen was accustomed to it, saying it was due to the original Valkyrian lineage, simply because their mission to protect the Black Forest was bestowed by the Holy Empire. Without waiting for Siesh's response, Keen ordered Carl to dismount and check. He suspected the Holy King had done something manipulative at their resting place. Although Sisha didn't show any signs of suspicion, Keen still keenly noticed that the melody that had just resonated throughout the empire was a call from the elf crown. Seeing that his daughter had just arrived in the empire and was already so popular, Keen decided he also needed to work hard. Meanwhile, the song of the elf crown resonated through every corner of the empire. In the dungeon, Halen's body was covered in wounds. The Holy King's lips curled slightly upwards. He then ordered the knights to remove Halen's restraints. The profane song from that side floated wantonly throughout the empire. This was something he absolutely could not tolerate. He wanted Halen to reseal the elf crown, but Halen, hearing this, remained silent for a long time, merely listening quietly to the anthem of the crown in his ears, as if yearning for a reunion with the queen. Until Siesh's appearance, the once timid Theo completely vanished. His longsword, though unseen, remained sharp. It didn't affect my esteemed guests. A short while ago, Sisha was strolling through the holy city, thinking of the anthem that had just filled the holy city. Theo's face was filled with yearning. Even seeing the Holy King up close made him feel an unprecedented honor. Thinking of the Holy King's favor towards little Sisha, perhaps Lady Sisha might truly obtain the elf crown. Carl, hearing him, merely rolled his eyes towards this informant planted by the Nemia family. Carl couldn't give him a good look. Listening to the other party's sincere apology, Sisha, however, felt a pang of pity. Although born into the Nemia family, one of the three great noble houses, Theo could only live cautiously. At this moment, a pair of holy knights happened to pass by. The moment they brushed past, one of them called out Theo's name. Theo, hearing this, his expression straightened, but he saw the other person enthusiastically greet him. The holy knight named Benji had once participated in the holy knight selection with Theo. Now, they met again in the holy city. He then looked at the two behind Theo, learning that Theo, from the Nemia family, was now merely a guard knight. Still a useless good-for-nothing, as always. How lucky that someone is still willing to hire a useless thing like you. The sudden provocation left Sisha stunned, but Theo seemed unaffected by it, though his body couldn't help but tremble. The first holy knight in history was originally a commoner who, by virtue of his powerful martial arts, was crowned by the Holy King and only then gained holy power. This story, like a divine legend, had captivated young Theo. He wanted to gain his father's approval through this method. Thus, at just 13 years old, Theo chose to secretly go to the Holy Empire. He knew his own clumsiness, so he could only train even harder. Until someone approached him. Learning that Theo also came from a noble background, Benji immediately warmed up to him and enthusiastically greeted him. He became Theo's only friend in a foreign land. Unlike the taciturn Theo, Benji possessed excellent social skills and quickly blended in with his peers. Until Theo's duel with Benji began. Benji, falling under Theo's sword, completely revealed his true colors. He absolutely wouldn't allow himself to lose to a good-for-nothing. But Theo, noticing Benji's change, in order not to lose his only friend, had to intentionally lose to him again and again. Until the instructor discovered all of this, Benji could no longer tolerate it and began a long period of bullying against Theo. Until Theo's unauthorized departure was discovered by his family. That was the last time the two of them met. Therefore, facing Benji now, Theo felt a deep-seated fear, stemming from his inner cowardice and shame. And at this moment, Lady Sisha could no longer stand by. You are not allowed to bully Theo. Theo's hesitant and subservient expression left little Sisha very puzzled. If you don't like him, then hit him. Theo is clearly much stronger than him. Why endure it silently? Looking at little Siesh's serious expression, Theo felt something within him awaken. A person who can't even protect himself, how can he become a guard knight? Seeing Theo before him daring to talk back, Benji suddenly surged with anger. He raised his fist, intending to teach Theo a lesson, but the next moment, a sharp blade pointed at his throat. Theo's usual sword had been drawn at some unknown point. Facing his former vanquished foe, Theo finally broke free from the shadows of his childhood. Nor did it affect my esteemed guests.